Hello. Can you guys hear me? Can everybody see me and hear me? Okay. Just hoping that this is going to go right. Everybody, welcome to Lorebeards 40K. Today we're going to talk about Sanguinius, and I'm pretty excited about it. Can somebody in chat just confirm? Okay, thank you. Sound is good. All right, great. Appreciate you guys. Being on my own here again is it's a little intimidating sometimes with all the things that have to happen to make a stream function correctly. So uh, I'm gonna lean on you a little bit. Happy New Year, everybody! Welcome to a new year, which is for me is kind of wild. This is my 23rd year professionally working with Warhammer 40K. That's a long time, almost half my life. um, and yeah, if you don't mind, if someone puts up a super chat and it doesn't seem like I see it, please remind me because I don't have Alexis here to help me out. I actually yes. Speaking of being old, I saw a video this morning that I used to love. I love this video. I remember like, wow, this is a great video. And it's for anybody who's wondering, it's Eric Pride's "Call on Me." It's like EDM dance music stuff. And I realized that song came out 21 years ago, and I was like, my knees, my back, oh, I'm so old. It was it was wild. Anyway, oh, one more thing. If you guys are gonna give us minis to review, I would like to wait for a video where Alexis and I can both look because I have I have my background in mini painting, but she's done a lot more mini painting than I have in general, and especially lately, like recently, with like the more up to date colors and tools and things like that. So I would prefer to have her here if we're going to review minis and paint jobs, just because she's going to have a perspective on it that I think you guys would appreciate. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about what if Sanguinius returned from the dead, and this is a really interesting topic. It's a lot deeper than it appears on the surface. I'm sure a lot of you out there are thinking to yourselves, "Hey, the two Primarchs have already returned. The Lion, who everybody thought was dead, except for the inner circle of the Dark Angels, and Rubuthe Gilliman, who was mostly dead. I guess we'll say in the Princess Bride version of that for a very long time. So the difference between those two and Sanguinius is possibly the most definitively dead Primarch in the entire setting. You can have a discussion about Ferrus Manus also being the most definitively dead, but I would argue that Sanguinius is actually more definitively dead even than Ferrus Manus, the Primarch of the Iron Hands. And the reason why this is really interesting to me, like on the deep dive side of it. Okay, so Longlegs 1997 says other than Horus. Okay, good point. Horus is also definitively dead, but Sanguinius is well. There's reasons why I think his death is a little more profound, and we'll get into that. The point I want to stop here and mention is this is the part of the movie where we would have that Ian Malcolm meme from Jurassic Park, where he comes out and says, just because you thought you could, you didn't have to think whether you should. And whether we should bring back Primarch Sanguinius is even more fascinating a question than how he would come back. So I've set aside some time towards the end to talk about, like, should Sanguinius return or not. So one thing about this week as opposed to last week. Last week I had a lot of really great pictures to show you guys, lots of great images, because I wanted to show you the models that existed for the 13th Company last week when we talked about them. This week I don't have a lot of pretty pictures. What I do have is I did a lot of research, took a lot of notes, and went out in search of some of the weirdest and most interesting fan theories because I think those are worth discussing as well. So I guess we should start with a very simple question: who is Sanguinius, right? So in we have previously described the setting in general, and we've described Space Marines at the kind of surface level. And Space Marines, of course, are these transhuman warriors who were born from the genetic material of the Emperor's 20 or 21, depending on which source you believe, sons. The 20 or the 20 or 21 sons of the Emperor. One of those sons of the Emperor is Sanguinius, and Sanguinius was one of the most important and significant Primarchs of those 20. I'll be happy to discuss why, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people going, "Oh my God, what are you talking about?" So if you look at my shirt today, I'm wearing a Blood Angel shirt. I've got Blood Angels up on my shelf behind me. I do often wear a Dark Angel shirt, or Dark Angel's hat, I should say, because the Dark Angels are probably my favorite chapter. But Blood Angels are right up there. They were the first Space Marine army I built, just as an example. So who is Sanguinius? Sanguinius is, or I guess was, maybe a better way to phrase it. He was an angel winged being, and why is having angel wings a thing? It was a very distinct and prominent and visible mutation. As far as we know, Sanguinius is the only Primarch of the 20 that is a mutant, straight up has, mutant characteristics. Mutants in general are looked down on in the Imperium. They are considered, at best, lesser beings, and at worst, walking heresy that must be extinguished. So Sanguinius being a mutant was kind of a big deal. He had these massive angel wings, but the Emperor said, "It's okay. This is one of my sons. It's fine that he has wings. Nobody say anything." And nobody did say anything. And nobody has said anything. And it's never really been an issue throughout the 10,000 years since the Great Crusade, which is kind of fascinating, really, if you think about it. Like, nobody stops to say, "Wait a minute, that dude has wings, actual wings. Are we not concerned about this?" Yeah, nobody cared. Part of the reason nobody cared is because Sanguinius was beloved as a Primarch. He was respected and admired by all of his brothers. It's difficult for me to imagine one of the other Primarchs like being angry at or being upset with or being in opposition to Sanguinius. He was just a very well-beloved, respected figure. In fact, in the Imperium, his image is one of the most common seen associated with the ecclesiarchy because of the way he died. He died as a martyr protecting the Emperor. And the ecclesiarchy, they're all about martyrs. So they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll just stained glass windows of Sanguinius everywhere." There are many planets with images of Sanguinius in their churches, their cathedrals. Oh, I do see a quote I would like to, or a comment I'd like to bring up here. Ricardo Andre 7049 says, "Red Angels Mephiston, Golden Angel Dante. Sanguinius is already in the setting, just slashed in two in his greatest sons." I mean, we'll talk about that a little bit. It's important to point out, though, that, and this is something that I have screwed up in the past. So it's one of the reasons why I was like, "Oh, there is a guy called the Red Angel in Horus Heresy who is not either of those guys and is not Sanguinius. The Red Angel is someone very different." And even so, like, there's a guy called the Red Angel, but Angron, the Primarch Angron, one of his epithets is the Red Angel. So you have a little bit of confusion with who exactly is the Red Angel in 40K. Just thought I'd bring that up. All right. So Dendakis asks, "Wasn't Vulcan also mutated by the radiation of Nocturne?" Good question. I always assumed that was just an expression of his genetics that caused his black skin and red eyes. I'll have to look that up. That's an interesting question. If that's true, I'd forgotten it. So I'll have to check that out. Anyways, so yeah, Sanguinius was discovered. So if you recall that when the when all the Primarchs were born, were created by the Emperor on Terra. They were created in this like special lab set aside for their creation, and then they were stolen, transported, stolen away to be scattered across the galaxy and land on very many different planets. The official sources always say that it was the influence of chaos that did this. And when Sanguinius landed on the planet he was sent to, he landed on a planet called Baal Secundus, which is it's a nasty world. Speaking of radiation, awful lot of radiation on Baal Secundus. It's kind of like a Mad Max, or I guess The Hills Have Eyes, maybe might be another reference to it. It's a planet where the people that live there are twisted, mutated. They're often grotesque because of the burns from the radiation or the other environmental issues. One of the things that happens when you become a blood angel and they recruit from Baal and Baal Secundus is that the gene seed kind of transforms you as you go from being a human to a space marine. It also changes your appearance, and the people that the blood angels recruit from are all these sort of grotesque, I mean, that's the best word I can think of, beings. When they become blood angels are renowned for their beauty, their noble countenance, just like Horus and the Luna Wolves, or Sons of Horus. The impact of the Primarch's gene seed is very strong in the blood angels in terms of their appearance. It is often pointed out that you can look at different chapters of Space Marines that are all descended from the blood angels, and they all have sort of a family resemblance because they have that strong connection in the way that their features become beautiful, become noble along the way. So he was beautiful, charismatic. He had a lot of things going for him. He also was very Sanguinius was also very, very strongly psychically active. He wasn't as strong as, say, Magnus, certainly. But I would probably rank him pretty close. I would say he's only a couple steps down. Well, that's to be clear, it's hard sometimes to rank psychic strength, especially with Primarchs, especially Sanguinius, who died so early. He dies at the end of the Horus Heresy, so 10,000 years before current era 40K. So it's difficult to like say, well, he's this strong, he's that strong. We know he was strong. We'll just say he was a strongly gifted psyker. One of his gifts was he was able to see the future from time to time. He would get prophetic visions. And in one of these visions, he actually foresaw the moment of his death. He foresaw that he was going to die fighting Horus to protect the Emperor. So that's kind of an important thing to bring up. He was renowned as a warrior philosopher and had a calming, inspirational presence. This is important because one of the genetic flaws of the blood angels, of the gene seed of Sanguinius, is that it comes with this curse called the red thirst. The red thirst is this desire to drink blood. Sometimes they need to drink blood. The blood angels, the descendants, the sons of Sanguinius over time, they have been known to drink blood like vampires. And in the early years of the Horus Heresy, let me rephrase. In the early years of the Great Crusade, before they found Sanguinius, they still were able to create the Ninth Legion from his gene seed, and they were called the Eaters of the Dead because those guys would stop in the midst of battle to consume the flesh of their enemies. And in fact, one of the successor chapters of the Blood Angels, called the Flesh Terrors, they continue this practice, I guess is probably a better, habit is another way to put it. They do this a lot. Just double checking, nothing important here. Okay. So yeah, the red thirst is actually something carried in Sanguinius's gene seed. It's carried in all of the blood angels. But when he was around, I remember I was saying he has an inspirational, calming presence. When Sanguinius was around, his just being there, just being alive and being in communion with his legion, it lessened that impact. It made it less of an issue around him. And oh yeah, Conrad. Yeah, thank you. Ricardo Andre also points out that Conrad was an exceptional psyker. That's true. They both had divination powers. It's just that Conrad's was uncontrollable, and Sanguinius was a little more focused, but also he could only see certain things. Anyway, so where was I? Yeah, I was talking about his all Primarchs when they're with their legion kind of make the legion better, just not only in their leadership but also just their sheer aura, if you will, like the kids say it these days, the aura would stabilize any flaws or issues or problems in the gene seed. When Magnus joined the Thousand Sons, they had this issue where they were turning into creatures. It was a process called the flesh change, and when Magnus joined his legion, it became less of an issue. It was still there, just like the red thirst is still there with the blood angels. It's just not as pronounced, not as often, not as common. Anyway, the blood angels under Sanguinius were a truly, how do I say this? They were kind of like, they were one of the most heroic legions. They had a devotion to humanity. I don't think I wouldn't say that you could compare them to the salamanders, who also see themselves as the protectors of humanity. The salamanders are probably the most, for lack of a better word, nicest Space Marines. But the Blood Angels, especially during the Great Crusade, especially with Sanguinius, they were close. They cared about the welfare of the Imperium and Imperial citizens. They cared about not causing lots of collateral damage, things of that nature. They also had a savage ferocity in war. Blood Angels are known for absolutely devastating melee assaults, charges, anything that gets them in hand-to-hand combat. They will mess it up. Almost, I mean, they're not like World Eaters or Khorne Berserkers or anything like that, but they are really very strong in close combat. They always have been. And yeah, Sanguinius, he blended his influence with the existing culture of the Legion when he joined them, which was this savagery, this ferocity, and brought it and just kind of made it part of the whole in a very interesting way. Oh, God, Ricardo Andre, you're killing it today. I'm just bringing up all these quotes from him. Blood Angels care immensely about humanity. Salamanders care a lot about the human whole versus the individual, in my opinion. That's a interesting way to put it. I would say that the Blood Angels have a much, they're looking at the forest. Salamanders are looking at the trees, I guess, is maybe where you're coming from. And that's not inaccurate. I wouldn't say it's dead on, but it's close. And Greenfire points out that the Space Wolves went up against the Inquisition to protect people from injustice. Space Wolves care too, but it's a difference in intensity and scope. It is far more core to the character of the Salamanders to be defenders of humanity. It was very core to the Blood Angels to be defenders of humanity. That has lessened over time since Sanguinius's death, because there's a lot of things that happened after Sanguinius died. So let's talk about Sanguinius dying. Why? How did this happen? Why did this happen? What did it mean? Sanguinius died in the climactic moments of the Horus Heresy. The Horus Heresy is a major event that changed the galaxy for 10,000 years in the setting of Warhammer 40,000. And I have done some super deep dives on the Horus Heresy starting from 3 or 4 years ago up until now. So I'm like, that's, if you want to talk about like one of my areas of expertise, the heresy is one of my tightest, strongest areas of expertise. I can't wait to talk to you guys about the heresy and the legions of the heresy and the first captains and the Primarchs and all the stuff that happened during the heresy, because it's really, really interesting stuff. We'll get to that eventually. the short version is that the emperor's most favored son, Horus, Primarch of the Lunar Wolves, and later Primarch of the Sons of Horus, he took command of the Great Crusade after the emperor returned to Terra, and through a series of events became corrupted by chaos and believed that the only way to achieve his goals was to lead a rebellion against the emperor. So Horus gathered together 9 legions to face 9 other legions and essentially tore the Imperium in half with a massive civil war. It ended with Horus arriving at Terra in his ship, which was called the Vengeful Spirit, launching a siege against the Emperor's palace. And at the height of that battle, which, again, I'm vastly simplifying big events here, but at the height of that battle, the height of the siege of Terra, Horus deliberately drops the shields aboard the Vengeful Spirit to lure the Emperor on board so that he can defeat him. The Emperor does teleport on board the Vengeful Spirit, accompanied by several of his allies, including Rogaldorn, including several Custodes, including Sanguinius. They all get kind of scattered over the ship. Sanguinius ends up finding Horus first, and they have one hell of a fight. In that battle, Sanguinius gives up his life, but he does so to try and give the Emperor an advantage. He's trying to ensure that the Emperor will win. And Horus just does kill him there. And it's described as in the novels, the Horus Heresy novels, it is described as an obliteration of Sanguinius' soul. It is described as being shattered into like billions of shrapnel. It's a pretty final death. And because Sanguinius died at this moment fighting Horus, his psychic death scream echoes throughout the warp and echoes throughout all of his sons, all the Blood Angels, and they feel this massive rage that takes over. They all get kind of taken over by rage, and this is called the Black Rage. It's a fury that comes upon them in moments of stress, and they start to see glimpses of what Sanguinius saw. So they believe sometimes a Space Marine lost in the throes of the Black Rage will actually believe he is Sanguinius fighting Horus. It makes them berserkers. It makes them just, they are focused purely on the need to kill. So this curse, along with the Red Thirst. So the Red Thirst was already a curse, but now they also have the Black Rage. When a Blood Angel falls to the Black Rage, when he becomes consumed by it, it is generally the end. Like, there is some Space Marines can feel it temporarily, like in battle, like in the middle of a fight, you can be like, Black Rage, and it'll just kind of hone your ability to fight a little bit. But you can become consumed by it. And when you are consumed by the Black Rage, you live in that moment, in that instant when Sanguinius died fighting Horus, and it becomes an all-consuming desire to destroy the enemies of the Emperor. The Blood Angels take these poor souls, these lost brothers, they call them the Lost Brethren, and they form them into units called the Death Company, and they will field them in battle as berserkers. And the only ones that the Death Company will listen to are chaplains, or in the Blood Angels chapter, they're called sanguinary priests. But it's, I'm sorry, no, sanguinary priests are that's wrong. Sanguinary priests are the apothecaries. They will only listen to the chaplains. I'm sure they have a name for that. I forget what it's called. Anyway, so that's Sanguinius. That's kind of his death, and all those things that I wanted to hit the highlights on. So, Survivor says, Therapy would be nice, right, Sanguinius? Absolutely, Sanguinius. But for now, we need to kill every horse we see, and there are a lot of horses here. Dying bug noises. Yep, that's basically what happens. That's basically what happens. So, yeah, Sanguinius, the Blood Angels, and the Horse Heresy, those are all the major notes we needed to hit to talk about how could Sanguinius return. Well, it's so first of all, like why are we even talking about a Primarch returning from the dead? Because it's happened. I mean, we've had Guilliman and the Lion have models, they have fully returned to the lore, all those things, and it's very strongly hinted that a lot of the other Primarchs that are not definitively dead but are in fact missing may return at some point in the future, like Vulcan, like Layman Russ, like Corax. So how could Sanguinius return? Well, to get into that, we have to talk a little bit about I have to tell you a little bit about the main characters of the Blood Angels chapter that are not Sanguinius. Now we're talking about 10,000 years later. We're looking not at the moment of his death, but 10,000 years have passed. His sons have the Legion was broken up into different chapters. There were many second founding chapters from the Blood Angels. So the Blood Angels as a group are no longer as big as they were, but they're kind of technically bigger in that there's lots of little subgroups of Blood Angels running around. Of important, like the only one that's really that major is the one I mentioned earlier, which is the Flesh Terrors. There's also the Lamenters, which are a Blood Angels Blood Angels successor chapter that has like absolutely terrible luck. So and there's the one I like to talk about, which is the Knights of Blood, which were a Space Marine chapter that was excommunicated by an Inquisitor and are considered renegades, even though they technically aren't. Oh, we've got a super chat here. I should read this. Rush 2129. Again, I love that name. Love the what if. As a Blood Angel player on tabletop, me too. I want a Primarch tiered Sanguinor. We're going to talk about the Sanguinor with a Darkness in the Blood variant and or Dante in a Dreadnought. Poor Dante. Won't you just let that man rest? Sanguinor with Darkness in the Blood. Well, we're about to get into that. We're going to talk about these guys. Rush 2129 said that mentioned Dante and Sanguinor. These are two of the characters we need to talk about. So who is Lord Dante? Lord Commander Dante is the golden armored chapter master of the Blood Angels. He is also the oldest living Space Marine. And I know we talked a little, I think I mentioned this in the last stream. We talked about Bolvi Greybeard, who technically is older because he was around prior to the heresy and is around now, but he spent a lot of that time like in essentially a time warp. He spent it in the warp, which is not a place where time flows naturally. So if you want to talk about like the guy who has literally lived the longest from day one to day now, that's Dante. He's been around for over 1,000 years. It's not really certain, how many more years than 1,000, but he's over 1,000 years old. And they have mentioned numerous times in the novels, like when they look at Dante's face, normally he wears a mask that makes him look like Sanguinius. It is in fact the death mask of Sanguinius, which is important for this topic. But under that mask, he looks very old. Like his skin is starting to get papery and things of that nature. He's starting to show his age. Mornington Crescent says about 1400 at this point. It was about 1200 before the big rip, meaning the Era Indomitus, the Cicatrix Maledictum, this warp storm that split the galaxy in half. So yeah, 1400. I mean, that to me that seems reasonable as an estimate. Certainly more than 1200 years old. After the Great Rift tore the galaxy in two, Guilliman elevated Dante to Lord Commander of one half of the galaxy, the half that, basically the crappy half, the half that was cut off from the Astronomicon and under siege. poor Dante, all he wants to do is die. This guy, he is the weary but unbroken warrior trope in 40K. He is constantly like, man, I want to put my burdens down, but they keep giving me things to do. And Gilliman gave him command of the Imperium Nihilus, which that's what that section of the galaxy is called. And Dante is responsible for the defense and organization of thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of worlds. It's a big responsibility. It's huge. To common citizens, Dante is a mythical figure. He's known for his golden war gear and tactical brilliance, and an unyielding refusal to abandon humanity despite his age and weariness. He may be an old man, but he may even be a little bit grumpy, but he's not grumpy about the Imperium. He's like, no, we are doing this thing and we're doing it right. Dante is definitely one of the more noble characters of the current era. He's kind of always stood for, stoic, heroic defense of the Imperium. He's always stood for defending the ideals of the Blood Angels and the culture of the Blood Angels. If I was, God forbid that I ended up in the 40K universe, but if I was in the 40K universe and my planet was under attack and Lord Commander Dante showed up, I'd feel a hell of a lot better about my chances of survival, because that guy will not, he's not going to give up easily, We've got another super chat here. Let me throw this up here. Ricky Chapman, 3377. Thank you, sir. In our tabletop role-playing game campaign, we fought some Blood Angels, specifically the Death Company. We, a rogue trader with a high-powered rifle meant to kill Ambuls, would have been torn apart if we didn't have it. Yeah. A group of Death Company would be a very scary thing to face as a rogue trader. I would want to be very, very far away for sure. So Rush asks, does this mean he is the Lion's boss? Eat corpse starch Dark Angels. Hey, I like the Dark Angels. No, he's no. Lord Dante absolutely does not have authority over the Lion. I don't believe he and the Lion have met. They might have. I'll have to look into that a little more. But yeah, I do. Did they meet? Because I read Son of the Forest, and I know there's more stories of the Lion. You guys will have to tell me. There's so many books, man. I'm trying to catch up, trying to keep up. It's hard. Anyway, so Mornington Crescent points out that this is an important fact. Dante has been active longer than some Primarchs. Yes, this is in fact very, very true. When Gilliman met Dante, for example, he knew without a doubt that Dante had more years of experience defending the Imperium than him. Gilliman only has like 300 years, maybe 400 at most, defending the Imperium, whereas Lord Dante has, between 1200 and 1400 years. He could probably teach the Lion a few tricks. It says here, you guys are saying that they did meet in Arcs of Omen, a book that I have not read yet. I will have to check that out. Okay. So yeah, he's defined by his duty, his exhaustion, and his sacrifice. These are all things that are defining moments for Dante. He's tired and ready for death, but he continues fighting because he believes he has a role in defending mankind. The burden of leadership is one of the big weights that lies on Dante's soul, because his chapter was shrinking. They had fought many, many battles, and they had lost many, many brothers. And over time, the strength of the Blood Angels chapter had been slowly dwindling. A lot of this changed under his leadership, thanks to an event called the Devastation of Baal. Yeah, I know that sounds bad, but it's actually kind of a resurgence for the Blood Angels. So I only mention that. We will have a whole show on the Devastation of Baal at some point, because it's a really fascinating story. So that's who Lord Dante is. And we also need to talk about the Sanguinor. Who is the Sanguinor? Hardly anybody knows who the Sanguinor is. He has an official model, so he's definitely a guy who exists. He's a mysterious golden angelic champion who kind of appears only in their darkest hours to turn the tide of battle. It appears he has a jetpack. I have the model, actually. It appears he has a jump pack, but he also appears to have wings. That may just merely be a cool special piece of war gear. The Sanguinary Guard of the Blood Angels also have jump packs with wings kind of sculpted into them. The Sanguinors, it's not really certain if those are actual wings. They might be. Who knows? His true nature is extremely unclear. Some sources say that he's a warp-forged manifestation of Sanguinius's hope or rage. Others say he's the herald of Sanguinius that has ascended to become some sort of warp entity, not unlike a demon. And so you remember how I said most people look at Dante as a mythic figure? The Blood Angels consider the Sanguinor kind of the same thing. They believe he is a semi-divine, semi-mythic avatar of their Primarch. And every time he shows up, they write it down. They're very careful to record every appearance by the Sanguinor because you can't predict it. It's just it might happen, it might not happen. Any particular battle you're in, the Sanguinor just might show up. And how does the Sanguinor fight compared to a Blood Angel? Well, he's very similar to, say, like a company captain or a chapter master. He's an extremely skilled duelist. You don't want to face him in close combat if you can avoid it. He's very quick, he's fearless, and difficult to kill. Like, those are all the things that are known for sure about the Sanguinor. And I can think a lot of you are already kind of seeing where this might play into like how Sanguinius might return. But the Sanguinor is an important dude. And the last one we need to talk about is a guy called Mephiston. Mephiston. A lot of people pronounce his name in a lot of different ways. So Mephiston is the chief librarian of the Blood Angels. He has another title. They call him the Lord of Death. He's called the Lord of Death because he used to be just a librarian called Callisterius. He was a normal librarian. Callisterius, one day, he is fighting on Armageddon. There's a lot of stuff that happens on Armageddon. We will cover Armageddon in the future on the show. I'm just going to skip over it because we don't have time to get too deep into Armageddon. But there was a battle in this world called Armageddon. Callisterius gets buried under rubble during the battle, and he was overwhelmed by the Black Rage, which, as I mentioned before, is essentially a death sentence. There's according to like most schools of thought, there's no coming back from the Black Rage. Mephiston proved everybody wrong. He is the one guy, through strength of will, or maybe some other effect. It's largely attributed to his strength of will and determination. He managed to fight through the Black Rage and emerge sane. But he was changed. He was no longer Callisterius. He was Mephiston, the Lord of Death. Now, Mephiston, he's very strongly based on a lot of like the vampire count stuff from Warhammer Fantasy or Gary Oldman in the Bram Stoker's Dracula film. Like, his armor looks like exposed musculature. And he has been depicted as having some of the most prominent vampire fangs. Blood Angels do have extended canines, but like Mephiston is the guy shown to have like serious Dracula energy. Serious Dracula energy. He is, well, because he was able to overcome the Black Rage, which is a thing no one else has been able to do. It greatly amplified his psychic power. Mephiston is one of the strongest psychers in the setting. he's a figure of awe and fear within the chapter. Most people are like, "Oh, it's Mephiston." You're like, "I don't want to be around this guy. He's scary." He could, I'm sure if you were a blood angel in the chapter, just walking down the hall and you saw Mephiston coming, a little part of your brain would be like, "Is today the day that he finally succumbs to the Black Rage? Is today the day when he cuts me down because I'm just here and happen to look like Horus in his mind?" I can understand why they consider him a being of fear. Um, he is Dante's one of Dante's most indispensable advisors, and has fought with the Blood Angels against, well, in almost every major campaign uh, in the post-heresy era of the Blood Angels. Was Mephiston was there. So now that we've covered like the main cast of the Blood Angels, I'm just going to check a comment here. N7 Greenfire says Mephiston is Sasuke. Okay, I watch a lot of anime, but I'm not familiar with that one. I'm guessing, I don't know, Demon Slayer? I don't know what that's from. Anyway, so let's talk about. Oh, sorry. Lich Lord Kier says this Naruto. Okay, well, that is a show I had not watched, but Sasuke. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now, yeah, he's kind of the edgelord in Naruto, isn't he? Okay. Cool. I'm sure a lot of people are going to think right now, why haven't you watched Naruto? Oh my God, what's wrong with you? I just haven't. There's a hell of a lot of good shows out there, guys. I'm working my way through them, but it takes time. Yeah, I've already got a question. How did you not watch Naruto, Ricardo Andre? Bro, I just didn't. That's the best I can tell you. I also haven't seen Dragon Ball Z, which I also know is vastly influential on a lot of things. I have watched a lot of One Piece, if that helps. Anyway, so let's talk about the theories of how Sanguinius could return. Now that we've teed up all the names and all the kind of context about it, Sanguinius could return through a number of possible ways. One of them is possibly the most popular is the idea that the Sanguinor is a representation, a direct representation of Sanguinius. Some aspect of Sanguinius survived, and that essence takes the form of the Sanguinor. That's the theory. He is very mysterious. He has a lot in common with the Primarch, and because the Sanguinor is kept so vague in the official lore, there's room for him to be interpreted as some sort of avatar or echo of Sanguinius. Some people believe that the Sanguinor could eventually merge somehow with a living blood angel, possibly Lord Commander Dante, who, by the way, wears the actual death mask of Sanguinius, and then create a permanent form of possession where the Sanguinor possessing somebody's body is a form or a version of Sanguinius returned, without violating the idea that Sanguinius is actually dead. It's kind of an edge case because you're there's we're going to talk about this later. There's really important reasons why Sanguinius should be dead, and why that why we're going to talk about all that stuff. But if you do it this way, you kind of sidestep some of the issues about bringing Sanguinius back from the dead by saying, well, it's just a little piece or an echo of him that merged with Dante, and now it's a pseudo version of Sanguinius, but not actually, that kind of thing. An alternate candidate as the vessel for the Sanguinor is Mephiston, or Mephiston, however you want to pronounce it. Mephiston he could also act as some sort of avatar Sanguinius to be possessed by the Sanguinor, because he's got a very strong connection to the warp because of his psychic abilities, which were also present in Sanguinius. So there's a possibility there. I understand why this is a very popular theory. The Sanguinor. So, okay, here's where I kind of need to take a quick diversion. There was a pair of books written by James Swallow about the Blood Angels. It was about this guy named Raphin and his brother Archeo. And in those books, Archeo spontaneously generates wings from his back, proclaims himself to be Sanguinius Reborn, picks up the Spear of Telesto, which is, I think, one of Sanguinius, which I'm almost certain is one of Sanguinius's weapons. And it all turns out to have been like a plot by Fabius Bile to sow discord. And he's not actually Sanguinius. Archeo is not actually Sanguinius Reborn. But it does cause a schism between the Blood Angels over whether Archeo is or is not Sanguinius Reborn. You're not going to hear me refer to novels very often here, and we're going to have a show coming up soon to discuss why. The short version is that the only real known truth in 40K is from the rule books and the codexes, and only the most recent ones. And so I will refer to those far more often than I'll refer to novels. But it's important. The reason I'm referring to these novels is because it was an instance in the lore that people believed Sanguinius had returned. It turned out to be a trick, but it definitely sowed some seeds. There's reasons why a lot of people believe that this is a possibility for Sanguinius to return. So the Sanguinor as a vessel is probably one of the first and most common theories of how Sanguinius could return. Another one is the idea of the death masks. Like I said, the one that Dante wears is specifically Sanguinius's face, but death masks are common in the Blood Angels. They use them on the Sanguinary Guard, which are the honor guard, the bodyguards of Dante and other important members of the chapter. There's representations of Sanguinius on their sarcophagi. When Blood Angels rest, they rest in coffins. They rest in sarcophagi where their blood is recirculated and cleansed. There are a lot of vampire vibes with the Blood Angels, is what I'm trying to get at. Anyway, so you could think about the Black Rage as a resonating echo of Sanguinius's psychic powers, or his soul, or his essence. And visions, the visions that are given to you from the Black Rage, or visions from the Death Masks, because there are some sources that say the Death Masks also grant visions in the future, that these visions could intensify into some sort of communion between Sanguinius's essence and the Blood Angels. I kind of like this a lot. I think there's actually some pretty interesting ideas in here, because the Sanguinius's visions of his own death are a big part of who Sanguinius is. The Black Rage is a big part of who Sanguinius is, because it was his death that caused it. It was a psychic echo of that. And if you were to use those things that are so closely tied with Sanguinius and with his death to serve as a basis for how you could potentially bring him back, or at least commune with his spirit in some manner, or I know I'm talking nonsense here. Ghosts don't exist in 40K. It's a thing I have to keep mentioning. But there are weird, unexplained supernatural events that happen. And a unexplained supernatural event that wouldn't be that weird or that out of context, it wouldn't break my immersion in 40K, is to use the idea of the visions and the echoes of the Black Rage as a means of this might also be the way you channel Sanguinor into your body and kind of bring it back, bring back a version of Sanguinius. Osmolo0575 says, it is not a ghost. It sounds like an echo that transcends time and space. I mean, I would argue that can also describe a ghost, but good point. Oh, and he also says, Yvrain says, put me in, coach. So Yvrain is an Eldari, I should say, an Eldari woman who is the high priestess, if you will, of the Eldari god of the dead, who's called Yanari. So Yvrain, working with Yanari and a lot of other people, including Inquisitors and a living saint and various other people, she is the one who's responsible for helping Gilliman come back from the dead. where he was only mostly dead, and then they kind of had to like push him over that line, and then that was what enabled her to bring him back fully. So suggesting if Rain could get involved here, I mean, it's not completely impossible. It's just it's difficult. We talked about this a little bit when we talked about the what would happen if the battle for Macragge was lost, and Guilliman being eaten and devoured by the Tyranids, and Yvraine trying to resurrect him from scraps. It's I don't know. So it's an interesting idea to involve Yvraine, because she could potentially happen. That is one of the theories, is that Belisarius Cawl, who was also involved with the resurrection of Guilliman, and Yvraine could form an alliance, use the same methods that they used on Guilliman. But there's so many obstacles. Guilliman was never really truly dead. Like, his soul was still kind of connected to his body. And Inari, the god that Yvraine follows, I know Inari is the name of the group, isn't it? It's the name of the faction. Yniad is the name of the god. So, sorry, boys, there's a lot of names. As a quick aside, if you ever want to have a lot of fun with someone, ask how many times the name Reaver in different spellings shows up in Games Workshop products. It shows up a ton. I mean, if you just want to talk about 40K, there's the Reaver jet bikes, the Reaver Titans, and the Reavers, who are a squad of Primaire Space Marines. That's just three off the top of my head. And then there's a Blood Bowl team called the Reichland Reavers, and then there's lots of Reavers. Oh, there's a Reaver Titan. Anyway, so Yniad is the name of the god. The Inari is the name of the cult. That's the reason I was trying to get that out. Anyway, so in Yniad's power to return people from the dead, it seems very limited. It seems it's not just something she can just snap her fingers and do. To bring back Guilliman, that also required the living Saint Celestine, and yeah, I don't know. It's a theory. Could Yvraine and Cawl work together to bring back Sanguinius? This one doesn't feel nearly as plausible to me as the idea of the echo, the one we talked about earlier with the echoes of the Black Rage and the visions. So I'm going to say I find this a very unlikely theory or idea, just because I'm very skeptical about how they would achieve this. And Seven Greenfire gives us a super chat. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you. Games Workshop's let my girl collect her Primarch reverse harem, and my life is yours. So there's a meme of Yvraine and Guilliman being a couple. It's a meme I happen to really love. I actually really like that one. And so N7 Greenfire is referencing this with the idea of, I guess Yvraine now has two boyfriends, two husbandos, with if she brought back Sanguinius. Yeah, well, I mean, it's an interesting thought to turn it into a throuple, I guess, instead of just a couple. And Ricardo Andre, man, you're killing it today. He says, could they do it? Yes. Is it hard? Absolutely. The warp is a way to make the impossible possible. You're not wrong. The warp is a place where the standard rules don't apply, and warp involvement is as close as 40K gets to a wizard did it. How did this happen? The warp. So, maybe. So anyway, those are just a couple. Let's talk about the next one, the stasis or coma theory. So this is an idea that Sanguinius is not actually truly dead, but in some form of stasis or sleep state, not unlike Lionel Johnson. So his body is preserved on bail. Sanguinius's body is preserved on bail, and that might be evidence that resurrection could be fairly simple. How can we reawaken our dead Primarch? The lore does say that his body was recovered and remains intact. And you can argue that there's a narrative thread there. Why preserve the body if you're not going to bring him back, right? But yeah, again, I don't think so. So Lionel Johnson was never dead. He was just dormant. Gilliman was mostly dead, and then eventually fully dead, and then eventually fully alive, all within the space of a short period of time. Sanguinius has been hella dead for a very long time. I just don't see it. The Blood Angels having his body is important. It gives them a connection to their Primarch, and they use his blood in a lot of their rituals. Again, strong vampire vibes. Leaning into the vampire side of the Blood Angels would be, I think, the most interesting way to use this theory, to say, okay, I've already stated I don't think a lot of this theory, but like, let's see how it plays out, Cotton. If you were to somehow reanimate the corpse, one of the most thematically satisfying ways to do that, I think, would be to lean into the vampire side and say that he has to feast on the blood of 1,000 blood angels. He has to go full Dracula and be constantly drinking blood every night or something like that. In this scenario, I think it makes Sanguinius more of a monster and less of a Primarch, but there is a way I could see that happening. Now, you guys, I see some of you guys are posting some of your theories here. I do want to go over these. Please remember them, because I will at some point. I will later on in this episode say, "Hey, everybody, post up your fan theories." But again, it's important to point out this is a corpse. It's not like Gilliman, who was in stasis. It's not like the lion, who was dormant. This is a corpse. This is the dead body of Sanguinius. So, what about cloning? Right? The cloning theory, Fabius Bile has already in the lore messed around with Sanguinius's DNA. He has, he's responsible for Archeo and Rafin and all the big schism that happened in the novels. And he's in the lore, he's a master of cloning even Primarchs. According to many sources, Fabius Bile has cloned Fulgrim, and one of those clones of Fulgrim has ended up in Trazen the Infinite's collection. So, could Fabius Bile make a clone of Sanguinius? Almost certainly. But even Fabius Bile will say that his clones are not the real thing. He's cloned Horus multiple times. And every time he's cloned Horus, it's just not the same. It's not the actual guy. It is a copy, or it seems like the clones of the Primarchs are missing something vital. Some sort of significant portion of their essence seems to not be contained within just the genomes of their bodies, but is in fact a more ephemeral, intangible thing. So, yes, technically Fabius Bile could create a clone of Sanguinius, but it wouldn't actually be the same, Ricardo Andre, God damn, you're killing it. He points out that the Fulgrim is the perfect clone because sources do claim that Fulgrim that is in Trazen's collection is perfect. I would argue that a real Primarch would be able to escape Trazen. But I think, it's an interesting point that the closest you can come to actually resurrecting a Primarch is that clone of Fulgrim. Anyways, so there was the cloning theory. Also, to point something out about the clone of Fulgrim. So Fulgrim is a unique. He's in a unique situation where his soul was kind of displaced. A demon I don't know if I want to say a greater demon, a powerful and influential demon took over Fulgrim's body. So Fulgrim's soul was still intact, quote unquote, and apparently attached itself to the perfect clone, and that's one of the reasons why it's considered the closest thing to a returned Primarch through cloning. And obviously, Sanguinius is not in that. He's in a very different position than Fulgrim was. But you could, so Fabius could create a genetically perfect body. And some people believe that if you have some sort of vessel that is perfect for the Primarch soul, not unlike what happened with the Fulgrim clone, that the shards or shattered pieces of Sanguinius' soul could eventually reconnect or coalesce back into that body. So this is it plausible? To a point, yes, it is plausible to a point. Again, I would argue that I don't consider I don't consider Clone Grim, which is what they call the perfect clone of Fulgrim. I don't consider Clone Grim to be a true Primarch, because I feel like actual Fulgrim would have been able to break out of Trazen's collection. But he's definitely the closest we have to what that would be. And could you have a twofer? Could you create a body for Sanguinius that does a very similar thing? Potentially. There's lines in the Horus Heresy novels that suggest that Sanguinius' soul was obliterated. That when Horus destroyed him, Horus was at the height of his power, filled with the corruptive taint of the Chaos Gods, and just snuffed out Sanguinius' soul. This is also what is said about Horus to an extent, that his soul was also utterly destroyed in the battle. But so bottom line, could Sanguinius be cloned and then returned to life? Yes. Do I think it's highly unlikely? Yes. Why do I think it's so unlikely? Well, first of all, it's the second time they tried. Games Workshop generally does not want to do things multiple times. They generally like, well, we have this guy, but he's in a different place than this other guy. They rarely put multiple eggs in a single basket, narratively speaking. So I don't see it as likely. It would also be, honestly, I think it would be a little boring to just copy Fulgrim as well. So to me, this is unlikely because it's uninteresting. That's my take on it. I'd love to hear what you guys think of it. So we talked about the Eldar theory, we've talked about the cloning theory, we've talked about the stasis theory, we've talked about the possession theory, and we've talked about the visions theory. There is another one. Actually, there's a couple more. The complex ritual theory, the most elaborate and possibly least likely theory, is putting together one hell of a team to bring back Sanguinius. Sort of like the team that was needed to bring back Guilliman. If you had someone like Fabius Bile, the Dark Eldar, Ivrain, Call, Chaos Sorcerers, if you put together enough powerful people in the same place and they all directed their efforts towards returning Sanguinius to life, they could do so through some sort of resurrection ritual, or again, it's a complex process of how Guilliman returned, but using Guilliman's return as a template to do a similar type of event with Sanguinius. This could happen. I mean, it happened with Guilliman, and there's kind of an open question over how much power Ivrain has over the dead, being the high priestess of Eniad. But so this will almost certainly require restoring Sanguinius's body to life, likely through cloning. Some sort of soul reintegration to bring Sanguinius' soul back to his body, assuming that his soul still exists. This would probably be through Ivrain's influence, or some sort of weird technology, or warp stuff, chaos sorcery, who knows. And you'd have to find the soul of Sanguinius. A lot of it's a kind of a fan theory that Sanguinius' soul has been shattered into pieces, because that's what happened with Magnus when Magnus died. Or actually, I shouldn't say Magnus died. When Magnus's physical form suffered a mortal wound, his soul seemed to shatter into pieces. So Sanguinius potentially could have had a very similar event happen to him upon his death. And being that Sanguinius was very psychically powerful, not as powerful as Magnus, but in the ballpark, that also suggests that his soul could be splintered. If you go with that idea, the Sanguinor could certainly represent a shard or splinter of Sanguinius' soul, his essence. And if that is true, if the Sanguinor is a piece of Sanguinius' essence, that would suggest that there are more out there to find, to gather together, to rebuild or repair his soul. So it's an entertaining thought experiment, but I think the odds of this working are basically zero. It was a miraculous confluence of events that occurred to bring Guilliman back. To do it again, I mean, it would be again, repeating something that's already done in the lore, which is not something Games Workshop does often. I would find it probably not that interesting unless there was a lot more context around this than just what I know. I don't find it to be a great theory. I think this is one I'm like, okay, that's interesting, and you're not wrong, but probably not. Like I don't really see how that would work. And then there's the last thing is the shattered soul theory, which I was just referring to. The shattered soul theory proposes that Sanguinius' soul was fractured by his death when Horus killed him, and the fragments are now distributed across his successors. Under this interpretation, the Sanguinor represents one piece of his soul, Mephiston another, Lord Dante, other blood angels may carry smaller echoes of his soul. And thus, resurrecting Sanguinius would be a matter of preserving what soul pieces remain and actively reassembling other pieces. But there's no established means in the lore to do that other than the warp did it. It's not like you could just go say, well, I'm just going to go find me a soul shard and put it back with this other soul shard. When Magnus went after all of his soul shards, which he did do, he did not find all of them. He only found most of them. And so the Magnus we know now is not the full Magnus that existed prior to the Battle of Prospero, for example. To me, this is an interesting theory. So there's a very strong narrative aspect, a great story thread is the idea that Sanguinius' soul lives on through his sons, through the Blood Angels. And given all that has happened to the Blood Angels, all the sacrifices and things that they've endured over time, it would be thematically appropriate for that to have some meaning in that they have carried on as Sanguinius wanted them to, and therefore can, through Christmas magic, somehow return Sanguinius to life. So I don't see complete resurrection here. I just don't. But it may, the idea that the Sanguinor is a piece of Sanguinius' essence, that is a strong idea. I like it. It feels right to me. And if you can communicate with the Sanguinor, you could potentially talk to a piece of Sanguinius without removing the narrative weight of his death from the setting. And here's where I need to talk a little bit about the narrative weight of Sanguinius' death. Sanguinius' death is such a major part of the setting. It's so big. It changed one of the most major Space Marine chapters irrevocably. It has inspired a lot of stories. His martyrdom is very meaningful in the setting. There's a lot of narrative weight hung on the idea that Sanguinius died, and he died specifically as a martyr to protect the Emperor. And I would say this: I think bringing him back would be a bad idea. Narratively, because it would then kind of establish the idea that Primarchs cannot die. And if you remove that, if you pull the idea that that Primarchs can die out of the setting, if you say no, they're immortal, they can always return somehow, the stakes feel lower. The risks feel less risky. The achievements feel less earned. It's just I just don't like it. I don't like the idea of undermining major themes and tropes and character development in the setting just so you can bring a guy back. However, Games Workshop has shown, I mean, they're a company, they're a corporation, they like to make money. And the Lion and Guilliman returning made a lot of money. They sold a lot of Dark Angels and a lot of Ultramarines. It's not impossible for Games Workshop to decide to bring Sanguinius back. And they might use one of these ideas. They might use something completely different. I don't know. So it's not impossible that Games Workshop would decide to bring him back in some fashion. And I would say that I think, for me, I would hope very strongly that they do so. If they wanted to do this, which again, there's no guarantee that they will. I'm not in charge. I'm not the guy who makes the decision. Games Workshop is the guy. They're the final say. But if Games Workshop were to come out and say, yes, we're bringing back Sanguinius and we're doing it in this way, I would really hope that it does so in a way that preserves that narrative weight of his death. Is that, like, can I think of a way to do that? No, not off the top of my head. But it's possible. If you have a big enough team and enough money and enough smart minds, maybe you can come up with a great idea. Who knows? I'm going to read a couple of super chats. Sarmillion Bloodweaver. Wow, that's a name. 4789. Try to reproduce G's revival, fail horrifically, set the stage for future success in some way. Maybe not revival, but something thematically close. Yes, you and I are on similar wavelengths. The effort to revive Sanguinius, whether or not it's successful, could be very narratively engaging. It could add a lot of depth to the story of the Blood Angels. It could add a lot of character to an already characterful legion or chapter. So, yeah, I think you and I are on the same page here. I like, maybe not in the specific details. But I like where your head's at. I like the cut of your jib, sir. It's very good. And we got Stephen Lucas 8836. Welcome, Stephen Lucas. Good to see you back. If Russ returns, want full wolf still with the Emperor's spear. Red hood, long, I don't know that word, Garial shaped snoot, ER Bloodhound Knight stance down on all threes, gangly big bad wolf Odin, too many beefcakes already. Bro, you're I am straining my brain on this one. Okay. I think what you're talking about when you say Red Hood is you're talking about the Red Hood from DC. DC Comics, the Red Hood. Jason, oh God, what was his last name? He was the Robin that supposedly died and then came back. The lore in the comics has been weird about whether he was actually dead or just off somewhere else, but Jason Todd, that was his name. Jason Todd did return in Batman, and that worked out really great. So, so he's talking about Russ, he's talking about Layman Russ, which is another one of the Primarchs, and he wants him full wolf. I guess. Do you mean wolfen? Do you mean like he's wolfed out? Anyway, the Emperor's Spear is a weapon that I believe is associated with Layman Russ, and he is missing. He went off on what's called the Great Hunt, and he has not been seen again. Red Hood, longer reel shape snoot, ER Bloodhound Knight stance, down on all threes. I guess, okay, it sounds like you're talking about some sort of werewolf-looking Layman Russ, which, I'm okay with it. Like, if the Canis Helix were to make him more wolf-like, it would make him more distinctive. I don't love the idea, I want to be clear, but it's not horrible. It's kind of neat. And the point you make here about too many beefcakes already, returning, so the two Primarchs who have returned, the Lion and Guilliman, have returned more or less as they were. Like the Lion is older, is really the only real change there. And the most interesting story aspects of a Primarch returning are how they would view the Imperium as it is today, as opposed to the Great Crusade era, and how or why they would change things. Like the Lion famously has started reconnecting with the fallen Blood Angels, who were pariahs for a very, very long time. And he's started reincorporating them into the Dark Angels chapter. Whereas Guilliman has done a lot of things, including leading the Imperium as a whole. So making Layman Russ distinct from those somehow, a good visual cue would be some kind of more wolfy appearance. I think if it were me, again, your idea is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But if it were me, I would want to see Russ maybe more similar to his Horus Heresy appearance, just a little more wolfy. Like take him and say like Wolverine from the X-Men, and let's kind of smash them together a little bit and see where you go from there. But interesting idea. Oh, Zero Daimu says Gariles are a thin-snouted type of crocodilian. Oh, thank you. I was not aware. Okay. So the most cynical Blood Angels fans are like, yeah, of course Sanguinius has come back because it makes money for Games Workshop. I don't know. Is Sanguinius's return inevitable? That's an interesting question. That's the question that is asked here at the end, because it makes business sense to do so. Again, I'm just going to say I hope not, or I hope if they do it in a very reasoned, methodical, well thought out manner. So anyway, let's move on. How about, would you guys like to hear the weirdest theories on how Sanguinius could return? The strangest ideas about how to bring back our beloved winged boy. So the strangest ideas to bring back Sanguinius, and let's be clear, the Warhammer community, the 40K community, is extremely creative. There's a lot of minds out there thinking of really interesting ideas. I am always impressed. Back in the 2010s, I was very active on boards like Bolter and Chainsword and Daka Daka and a few others. And I was always like, man, there's so many cool ideas. A lot of people out here who are so into the setting. And there's always, I mean, like, there's probably going to be like another 2 or 3 ideas about how to bring Sanguinius back tomorrow that I will have not covered, just because there's people doing it, people thinking about it this hard. And again, Sanguinius is such an important character in the setting that he's been thought about a lot. He's not a minor character. He's not even kind of off to the side, like, say, Alfarius is a good example of someone who doesn't get talked about very often. Anyway, so here's one of the strangest theories. The strangest theory that I have seen is that Sanguinius didn't actually die. His soul didn't actually die. It was just split into different pieces, and the shards are held by living Blood Angels and the Sanguinor. The Sanguinor being the angelic shard, supposedly the nobility of Sanguinius. Mephiston has the dark shard, the dark blood, if you will, that contains Sanguinius's more savage nature, and a red shard that is just sort of generally distributed amongst blood angels, or possibly concentrated into Lord Dante, which might explain his longevity and the fact that he miraculously doesn't, it is pretty miraculous for a Space Marine to be as old as Dante is. So it is unusual. Even weirder than that, though, some people believe that the Emperor embedded different souls into Sanguinius during his creation, like an angel of light and an angel of darkness. God, this is weird. Like, this is definitely somebody, bro, come over some night, we'll drink and we will just share weird ass ideas, because this is like the kind of idea I would have after drinking a lot. But these two pieces of Sanguinius' soul, the theory argues, operate independently. And they stopped being aspects of Sanguinius after his death and instead became their own beings. And that maybe Sanguinor and the Mephiston will be consumed by these separate soul pieces of Sanguinius in order to return Sanguinius to life. This is just weird. I'm sorry. It's just such a strange idea. No, I don't think so. So the Emperor did work some warp magic on the Primarchs. We know this. But I've never read anything to suggest that the Emperor stuffs multiple souls into Primarchs. So I don't think so. I really don't. Again, I love the idea of the Sanguinor being a piece of Sanguinius' essence, but I don't see his essence becoming other individual things. I guess they could. It's not as implausible as it might first appear, but it is very weird. And I sincerely don't think that this is how they'll do it, but you never know. Oh, okay. I got a couple super chats here. Ricky Chapman, 3377. Have two ratlings puppet his corpse. Weekend at Sanguinius's, everybody. Oh shit, the Blood Angels are coming. Quick, make him wave. And they just have Sanguinius. That'd be funny. Stephen Lucas, 8836. Left, right, lean, and glow to the ground silhouette. Oh, like a superhero landing kind of thing. As Games Workshop has so many upright posed characters, show how far the Wolfen mutation could go while still in control. He's talking about the appearance of Layman Russ that we spoke about a little bit back in the show. Yeah, okay. You got a point. It would giving him a different stance would help distinguish him as a Primarch. That's true. Still not my preference, but I can see where you're coming from. I dig it. It's cool. So yeah, Sanguinius' soul shattering into shards mirrors Magnus's soul shattering into shards, which did actually happen. Therefore, it's possible. I don't know. We'll see. Another of the weird ideas, now that we can move on from the dual angel theory, is Mephiston as a resurrection vessel. So one theory is that Mephiston is either currently possessed by or destined to become the vessel for a warp entity of some kind. And this warp entity might be Sanguinor, might be Sanguinius, it might be the Black Angel that we talked about a little bit ago. Some people say that Mephiston is undergoing a transformation into Sanguinius. And it's worth pointing out that the novels certainly say that Mephiston has a very strong resemblance to Sanguinius in his face and his, weird survival of the Black Rage. Imagine you're a comic book writer or something, and you've got that scene where Spider-Man is buried under the rubble and I have to struggle and strain, I have to get out of this. And that's Mephiston's journey but he spends an indeterminate amount of time under that rubble, changing from Callisterius into Mephiston. And you could argue that the catalyst that changes Callisterius into Mephiston is becoming a host for a piece of Sanguinius' soul. That's That's not insane. I actually kind of like this idea. Is Mephiston going to just transform into Sanguinius? Unlikely. Mephiston is a great character. He has a great model, and his story is really cool. Turning Mephiston into Sanguinius would eliminate Mephiston, which is a shame. And that's why I don't think it'll happen, because he's frankly just too cool to die, to go away. Please don't kill Mephiston. I really like him. However, what the thing that appeals to me about this theory is that it turns what could be a triumphant resurrection into a far more sinister, body horror-esque, a Space Marine just becoming more inhuman, more destabilized over time. It's the horrific version of this idea. I'm not sure I like it. Like, that's one of those things where I'm like, maybe it all depends on how it's handled, because you can have the best idea in the world, but if it's executed poorly, it just doesn't matter. And you can have a really off the wall idea that, if it's executed well, can be amazing. So, maybe. I'm kind of into this idea, though. I like, at least the part I like the most is that the catalyst for Mephiston's evolution from Callisterius into Mephiston could have been encountering or being possessed by or somehow engaging with a shard of Sanguinius's soul. So, so Ricardo, Andre, Lorebeards, sorry for this question. When shall be the vote? Oh, well, it sounds like you guys want to vote on these theories. Okay. Let's do a vote. Let's see if I can make one for the first set of the most common fan theories. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this. Usually I have support from Alexis, so I apologize. I'm gonna do my best. And sorry, I know there's a lot of radio silence here, but I'm trying to. Okay, there's the poll. Start a poll. All right. Which theory is best for returning Sanguinius? All right, so our options for this poll should be that first set, the most popular theories. I can only put 4 down, so I'm going to say Sanguinor, cloning, Eldar, and Shattered Soul. We'll do that. Sanguinor, cloning, and Shattered Soul. So there you go, guys. Poll is up. Vote on what you think is the most correct of the most popular fan theories. And Ricardo goes on to explain, I am just assuming for how Sotek and Andy do theirs, give us options, take the vote, see how the option chosen the story could evolve. Okay, yeah, happy to do it. I know I've been doing this for like a month now, still learning. Like, I had to ask Andy before we started the stream just to make sure I had set up the stream correctly. I want to give you guys the best experience, and if you guys are really enjoying the way that Andy and Sotek do things, happy to continue that. So yeah, just nudge me every so often, be like, hey, put up a poll. Let us talk about it. Evolve the story. I got you. So the poll is up. Osmolos 0575 says Andy and Ryan explain all, and then they start constructing a what if. Okay. I get a little lost in the explain all part, clearly. All right, so we're still in the weird theories here. We talked about Mephiston. Here's a really wild one. Maybe the darkest weird fan theory is that if Sanguinius returns, he could return as a demon prince of Khorne. This obviously plays into the savage side of the Blood Angels, the Black Rage. And in an encounter on Cygnus Prime, which is one of the battles in the very early stages of the Horus Heresy, the Blood Angels did encounter a group of demons, like flat out demons, which was really bizarre for that period of time because demons were just not a thing until then. And Cygnus Prime was the first time the Imperium faced demons that we know of. So it's a big deal. Anyway, Cygnus Prime, this is where we get that idea of Sanguinius as the Red Angel, is he was offered power by Khorne. Khorne, or maybe not Khorne, but maybe some being pretending to be Khorne. Again, remember the Chaos Gods are kind of like these massive cosmic storms. They don't really have wants and desires per se, but their followers will often act in their name. So maybe it was Khorne as Khorne, maybe it was a bloodthirster sort of pretending to be Khorne. It's a little up in the air. But anyway, a being that claimed to be Khorne offered Sanguinius the power of being his champion. So here's what's interesting about this idea is that returning Sanguinius as an adversary to the Imperium, that's interesting. It's wild. I don't love it because I love Sanguinius and I want him back as my beautiful winged boy, but at the same time, like this is a very cool what if. This is like one of my favorite what ifs is what if Sanguinius had to, become a demon prince. We should probably cover it on one of our Wednesday shows. This is Thursday show because it's New Year's Day. Happy New Year, everybody. But yeah, I think the idea of coming back as a demon prince is actually it's kind of cool, and it's wrapped in irony, which is like one of the best parts because Sanguinius was a avowed enemy of Khorne, and in fact, destroyed bloodthirsters, including one named Kabanda at one of the major moments during the Siege of Terra. So it's very ironic for him to return as a chaos being. I don't know. It's cool. It's a cool what if. I don't think it'll happen. It's definitely a strange idea, but it's a lot of fun to talk about. Now would probably be. I'm going to read a super chat and then I'm going to close the poll. So get your votes in now. Ricky Chapman 3377. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate your support. We enjoy the idea that souls in Warhammer can never be fully destroyed. Like a statue, it can be ground into powder, but the powder is still there, and you could build it again spec by spec. Yeah, that's a great idea. I personally like that a lot in the metaphysical sense that souls are eternal. So yeah, I mean the lore that describes Sanguinius' soul being obliterated it's a novel, so it's only kind of canonical. The lore that says he's dead, though, is very much canonical, so we know that is true. But yeah, I mean, the soul theory, the theory that his soul still exists in some form, like the Sanguinor, is one I like. I don't subscribe to the idea that he shattered like Magnus did, because Magnus's shards were very unique. They were, I don't know, it feels like you're making Magnus less interesting by trying to use the same thing for Sanguinius. And I don't mean you specifically, Ricky Chapman. I mean you in the general sense. You, like the listeners or the community or anybody who thinks that is the way to do it. I'm going to say I don't like it because it feels like making Magnus less special, but I don't hate it. If you establish that kind of thing is possible, which Magnus did, then why not? It raises some other questions, like where has his soul been? What's it been doing? Why haven't we had a Magnus-like quest of Sanguinius' spirit to recover his shards? I don't know. It raises some questions, but it's an interesting idea. I do dig it. Black Wolf says it's okay to make Magnus less special. I mean, okay, I have a soft spot for Magnus. Hubris was his undoing. He thought he knew better than everybody, and that's what screwed him up in the end. But his story is very, very tragic, and I like the fact that it's tragic. It's very important to the Horus Heresy as a story, is Magnus and what happened to him. And what happened to him affects not just the Horus Heresy, it affects his legion, the Thousand Sons. It affects another legion, the Space Wolves. There's a lot wrapped up with Magnus and the way he ended. So yeah, I will say I don't like making Magnus less special because he anchors a significant portion of lore. Not as much lore as Sanguinius maybe, but a significant portion of lore. Okay. So we were still talking about weird theories, but first let's close that poll and see what you guys came up with. Ending poll now. All right. And the answer is the Sanguinor is the most popular option there, although Shattered Soul was pretty high as well. So Sanguinor possessing someone and becoming a new version of Sanguinius. If that were to occur, my headcanon would be either Mephiston or Dante would be the one to merge with the essence of Sanguinius. I think Dante would be very ironic. And it could be, so Dante becoming Sanguinius would be interesting because there's a couple ways this could go. If Sanguinius returned by the Sanguinor possessing Dante's body, you could look at it one way where he's going to reward Dante with the thing he wants most, which is death. He's gonna offer him like, now your burdens are lifted, go be free. Your soul is now, it joins the emperor. I now inhabit your body. And so there's something beautiful about that, like the idea of the weary warrior finally laying down his arms and resting. I love that idea. Another way to do it, obviously, the darker way, is the Sanguinius just destroy, whatever was Dante is no more. It is just Sanguinius, and Dante ends his existence in a very uncertain, very unsatisfying way. It's just, one day he wakes up and he's like, oh, Sanguinor, boom, I am now Sanguinius. I am giving orders as if I was Sanguinius. Not nearly as satisfying. A third option would be that they merge somehow, where the Sanguinor and Dante become a distinct being that is very much like Sanguinius, but isn't just Sanguinius. It is a piece of both of them lives within that body. That would be kind of interesting as well to see. I'm sure they would have some interesting things to discuss, Dante and Sanguinius. Why do I feel like Dante would be my first choice? Is because it offers, I think, the most interesting story to tell, the most interesting combination of elements. And again, there's that symbolic passing of the torch, whereas Dante wears Sanguinius' own death mask. When Sanguinius returns, he no longer wears a death mask because he's alive, because that Dante has served his purpose as the stand-in, if you will, for Sanguinius, and now has to give way to the Sanguinor or Sanguinius, Sanguinius' essence. And Sarmelian Bloodweaver, great name again, points out, says Dante would welcome it. I'd let Dante rest. Yeah, that's why it feels good to me. Like, I feel like that's a story element. I'm like, oh yeah, Dante, you get to rest now. Doing it with Mephiston, though, I know I've already said, don't mess with my Mephiston. I like him. But he is the kind of character that you could replace with another named character, Blood Angel Librarian. Callisterius has already transformed once. He transformed from his original form into Mephiston. Transforming him again, I mean, it's certainly something that thematically is apt for Mephiston. And there's a lot of connections. We talked about how Mephiston is strongly connected with the warp. It has strong psychic powers. which is exactly what Sanguinius had. In fact, one of Mephiston's psychic powers, one of the Blood Angel in general psychic powers, from 5th edition, I think, or 6th, was the ability to create wings of blood and fly. And that is obviously an echo of Sanguinius's wings, which that would be kind of cool if you had a figure whose wings were literally made out of blood. And if you, it would also allow you to lean more into the vampiric imagery of the Blood Angels. I'm in my head, I'm envisioning, you know, almost a Van Karstein-esque look for Mephiston with these huge wings made out of, you know, red glossy blood. Maybe that's how his figure is suspended in the air, is that the blood drips from the wings onto the base of the model and elevates him up or something like that. I think that would be how I would see it. And it would let you bring Sanguinius back with a bit more of a sinister vibe. Because I mean, it's difficult for me to emphasize just how beloved Sanguinius was during the Horus Heresy. During up till his death, he was just, you know, the Chad. Everybody thought he was awesome. And having him return in Mephiston's body, who is an object of fear, in a darker form, would allow you to tell some interesting stories about. I'm sure Sanguinius would have a lot of, like, you know, who am I now as opposed to who I was then. Those are the questions that plague both the Lion and Guilliman as well. Is, you know, who do I become now, given that I am no longer who I was? So yeah, Mephiston would be a good person to have this happen to as well. A third option would be for the Sanguinor to merge with an unknown Blood Angel or a group of Blood Angels, causing some sort of large-scale sacrifice of Blood Angels and rising up out of their blood would be the way I see this in my head happening, is just a massacre, if you will, of a large group of Blood Angels and their, you know, I don't know, combine it with the idea of the echoes of the Black Rage, you know, all coming together. Actually, oh, what if it was a mass death of the Death Company? Ooh, okay. So that's an interesting idea. What if you tweak this theory a lot? Instead of the Sanguinor possessing an individual, the Sanguinor goes to the tower where they keep all the Death Company guys during a moment of crisis and releases, kind of like releasing Dante, releases a lot of these Death Company guys, they're the Space Marines that are afflicted with the Black Rage, essentially kills them and emerges from their blood, but doesn't kill, doesn't, like, more like euthanize than kill, I guess I would say. Is, you know, they are quickly and essentially painlessly dead, for lack of a better word. And then out of their combined blood comes the Sanguinor, who is becoming more real, more physical. You could even do this in stages. You could have the Sanguinor arise in a slightly more physical form and be able to speak to people, and he's still just the Sanguinor. It's not full-on Sanguinius, but that version of the Sanguinor could then evolve and change and grow. I actually really like that idea a lot, because there's just so little known about the Sanguinor. It would give us a chance to get to know this character. So pencil me in as I love the idea of the Sanguinor being the catalyst for change, being the catalyst for some sort of return of Sanguinius. And I think my favorite way to do it using the Sanguinor would be for the Sanguinor to attain some sort of physical form, possibly through the blood of a bunch of Blood Angels or Death Company. And that would mean he doesn't have to replace someone like Dante or Mephiston, who have really cool stuff in the lore. At least I think so. And it would allow the Sanguinor to grow as a character. So for me, I think that may be my favorite one yet. I'm going to say that might be my favorite way to bring back Sanguinius, in a form that doesn't, and this would be a way to do it where it doesn't necessarily undermine the impact of Sanguinius' death. And Osmolos0575 points out that gives us the option to watch more about the Black Rage. Yes, it would. You could. So they actually released a a formation for 10th edition 40K, which is a Death Company formation. And I was really tempted. I was like, man, if I was going to get back into 40K right now, painting models, I would do a Primaris version of the Death Company and just make it, use this new formation to do it. And it would be pretty badass. There are other named Blood Angel characters. There's Corbulo, who's their lead apothecary. They call him sanguinary priests. And there's a guy called Asterath, which is their lead chaplain. He's called the Guardian of the Lost. Asterath does a lot with the Death Company, for example. And there was a guy called Tycho who died. Look him up. He's kind of cool. We'll probably do an episode on each of these guys at some point. It'd be really, really fun. Rush 21-129. They returned to Cygnus Prime where it all began. Well, Cygnus Prime is just where the main impact of Cygnus Prime on the Blood Angels was just, hey, chaos exists, demons are real, and Sanguinius was tempted. He was offered. It was the last temptation of Christ, 40K style. The forces of chaos offered Sanguinius a boon that he chose to turn away from, to reject. Those are the major story elements of Cygnus Prime. I guess I don't see too much more significance aside from that. But Osmolos 0575 says, because the Black Rage is, in a way, the corruption of perception in mind and memory. If the Sanguinor gets a part of this, what will we get? Ooh, good question. Would the Sanguinor be affected by the Black Rage? Oh, shit, wouldn't that be scary? Well, in the headcanon that I just constructed of the Sanguinor resurrecting through, or becoming more physical, I should say, through the blood of a whole bunch of dead Death Company, would probably mean, yeah, Black Rage time, baby. That would be wild. All right, I am going to go back and I'll talk about the rest of the weirdest fan theories. We already talked to, just to recap, we talked about the dual angel theory. We talked about the idea of Mephiston being a how do I say this? Being a pupil form, or a vessel that will eventually transform into Sanguinius. And we talked about Sanguinius as the Corn's demon prince. So those are the three ones we've talked about so far. Here's some more weird ones. The 10,000-year-old prisoner. One variation of the theories is that Sanguinius is neither dead nor safely enshrined, but slowly going insane while conscious in the warp. Or possibly comatose in his golden sarcophagus on Baal. Yeah, that's the Black Mirror version. We're saying he's not dead. He's just slowly going insane inside his own body, a prisoner trapped in there. That would be wild. And the horrifying question here is, like, what would happen if Sanguinius was freed from this confinement? Because if the Death Company is constantly reliving those final moments with Horus, does that mean Sanguinius has been, if he's alive, if under this theory, if Sanguinius is a prisoner of some kind, and inside his own body, or inside his own mind, or his own consciousness, what the horrifying implication is that Sanguinius himself has been reliving that final moment, the confrontation with Horus, for 10,000 years. That's frightening. Definitely would not want to meet that Sanguinius. I think that would be kind of terrifying. Yeah, imagine a just screaming Primarch, weeping blood, probably. I mean, I don't see how you'd control him. I don't see how you'd stop him from just killing everyone. Like, that's a weird. Yeah, time is weird in the warp. Face Octopus points out. Maybe not 10,000 years in his time. Yeah, it's an unsettling theory. That's one of the reasons why I kind of like it, but I wouldn't go that route personally. Another weird theory is that the Horus Sanguinius fight went differently than we have been told. That what we've been told about the fight with Horus and Sanguinius is not actually the truth. This theory believes that Sanguinius actually killed Horus and drank his blood. And the emperor put down Sanguinius, who was in some sort of rage. Maybe the black rage at that time was Sanguinius's mind snapping after he consumed the blood of Horus, which is possibly the most corrupted being that's ever lived, or at least that we know of. That's not a demon. And the emperor has covered this up, this event. Which would be wild, because that means that all the black rage visions and everything, they're not seeing the honorable death of Sanguinius. They're in fact seeing his last moments before he succumbed to the red thirst, and instead they're seeing the last moments before their Primarch became a monster that had to be put down. No, I don't know about that. And this theory, to be clear, just says that Sanguinius is dead. He's just dead in a different way than we know. But it's wild. It's weird. Another one is the idea that in lore, blood angels consume part of Sanguinius's blood as part of the initiation. So this theory is called the distributed memory resurrection. And that the idea is that if all blood angels drink Sanguinius's blood as part of their initiation, then their gene seed carries his memories, because one of the things that a Space Marine has in their body is called a homophagia, which is a organ that allows them to eat the flesh of other beings and learn things about them. And it is strongly implied that the blood angel's homophagia is just tuned to blood. Like, it's a thing that all Space Marines have, but they have it a little stronger. It's a little more prominent in them, and that the red thirst kind of plays off of this idea. And this is why the pre-Sanguinius blood angels were called the Eaters of the Dead. This is why the Flesh Terrors are a successor chapter that are feared, because they will eat the bodies of the dead. So, anyway, so if they've drank Sanguinius's blood, then they have some of Sanguinius's memories because of the homophagia. So theoretically, a sufficiently advanced blood angel librarian could reconstruct Sanguinius from the distributed memories from the chapter drinking Sanguinius's blood. Maybe crowdsourced resurrection might be a different way to think about this. A communal reconstruction, if you will. But the twist here, the fun part of this idea, is that if it succeeded somehow, right, what you would get, I think there'd be an open question over whether that is Sanguinius or actually just some sort of collective delusion, or even a warp entity like a demon pretending to be Sanguinius, wearing Sanguinius's face, using Sanguinius's memories. It feels kind of like what Fabius Bile was trying to do in those novels, which is kind of wild. I dig it. I do have a couple of comments I need to read here. So Morning to Crescent says, wow, that comment is so big it actually hides my face. This Primarch is no more. He has ceased to be. He's expired and gone to his maker. He's a stiff. Bereft of life, he rests in peace. If you haven't nailed him in the mast, he'd be pushing up the daisies. This is an ex-Primarch. Yeah. I mean, insisting that Sanguinius remain dead is a very understandable position, and I'm kind of in favor of it. Although these ideas are fascinating what ifs, which is what I really dig about it. Nestor Vetumbra says, why not a third option, a psychic manifestation of Sanguinius in M42, but not his heroism or his rage, but his sorrow? Ooh, a sorrowful Sanguinius would be interesting. And at one time he was, so, to be clear, there was a point where Sanguinius was going to be the emperor of the Imperium Secundus, which was a fallback created by Gilliman and the Lion when they believed that Terra had potentially been lost. And they said, well, we will start a new Imperium here. And Gilliman didn't want to be in charge because he's just better at, logistics and strategy. He's better at big picture stuff. Details. He's good at details if they relate to his specific strengths. And the Lion didn't want to be in charge because he had better things to do. And frankly, just wasn't very well liked. Even the Dark Angels don't love the Lion. They respect him. But Sanguinius was the one that everyone could agree was inspirational and beloved and special. Seeing him return in a very sorrowful form, that could be an interesting take on it. I can imagine. So thematically and narratively, when you talk about sorrow in 40K, most of the time you're referring to the Eldari, who have a very tragic. They're in the twilight of their species, essentially. Thematically, playing. So this would be kind of the Lamenters version of the Sanguinius or the Sanguinor. Maybe when the Sanguinor shows up to help the Lamenters, he's crying. Maybe that's where we get. Maybe there's different versions of the Sanguinor depending on who's fighting and where he comes up. In fact, Nestor Vitember says Sanguinius the Lamenter. Yeah, that'd be kind of interesting. Actually got a comment here from Sarmelian Bloodweaver. Love this guy. Oh, I could totally see Sanguinius drinking Horus's blood to try and take some of the corruption from Horus to de-crazy him. Okay, actually that does. So yeah, Sanguinius would probably want to help Horus. You got a good point there. And so if he did that and he backfired, that could be part of what caused the Black Rage. Yeah, in the version, in the theory that the Black Rage or that Sanguinius didn't die the way we think he did, that would be an interesting twist on that whole thing. Okay, so there are a few more weird ideas, but they're the one I like is the idea. It's kind of beautiful in a melancholic kind of way, similar to what you're talking about. Is that Sanguinius has already been returning just as the Sanguinor is the last gasp of Sanguinius, and it is a thing that's always been there. It always shows up to help the Blood Angels when they're in their darkest hour. It's a pattern across 10,000 years that hasn't been recognized. That the Sanguinor has been with them all along. The real Sanguinius was the friends we made along the way. No, sincerely, it's I like it because it's melancholic and it fits with the grimdark narrative of 40K that I can imagine Mephiston or Dante or somebody just slowly realizing one day that the Sanguinor is Sanguinius, or the last piece of him, and he has chosen to remain with his sons, and this is the only way he can do it. And there is something beautiful about that. I kind of dig it. And the last one I want to talk about is called the Warp Echo. And this is one of this weird fan theory suggests that Sanguinius does not exist as a coherent soul anymore. A lot of these go around the idea that Sanguinius is soul fragmented. But his soul is kind of scattered psychic echoes in the warp, and that the Era Domitus with the Cicatrix Maledictum opening up is allowing these fragments to coalesce more directly. He's not being in this version of the theory, he's not really being resurrected. He's being reassembled by warp turbulence, or just things are kind of coalescing, coming together, collectively reforming themselves. And because Games Workshop has left Sanguinius's metaphysical state very vague, very ambiguous, this is possible. It could be. I mean, that's kind of a thing. But all these theories are interesting, but a lot of them contradict each other. And if Sanguinius's soul was shattered into pieces and they all live in the warp, then what's the Sanguinor? Is like the first thing I would ask. And it's fine for them, those things to be different questions. It's fine for the Sanguinor to not be part of Sanguinius. It's fine for the Sanguinor to be something completely different. It's just my favorite interpretation of the Sanguinor is that he is the embodiment of the last gasp of Sanguinius' essence. So take that with a grain of salt. It's my favorite idea. It doesn't mean it's true. Sanguinor could be a lot of different things. Could be a demon, which again would be very ironic. Osmolos says Sanguinius with his legs being in the wrong place while he reassembles. Yeah. It's not a perfect resurrection when the warp puts you back together in sort of a haphazard way. Would it? It would be very weird. This is a weird ass theory, and I don't really love it, but I can't just say no. It does. I can't say this is not plausible because it could happen. It could happen. So Rush 21129 points out that in the Black Legion books, crystalline sculptures of Sanguinius appear on the vengeful spirit and have a psychic presence, especially when broken, but they reform elsewhere. Any thoughts on how this might play out in his return? Bro, I don't know. And again, I'm unfortunately going to be like, I hate to be that guy. Like, I really don't want to be that guy. But I do have to point out that the novels are not necessarily the best source. They're just, I mean, Adeptus Ridiculous did a thing recently talking about the Ian Watson books, which were some of the very first novels for 40K. They're weird as hell. And they don't reflect, I don't think they even reflected 40K at the time very well, but the point is that novels have been published in the past and even not that long ago, like Xenology, which was a Black Library background book, that are absolutely not in line with current 40K in any way. And I don't know. Like, are the Black Legion books in that zone? I'm not going to say that they are. All I'll say is, if it happened in a novel, I'm going to look at it skeptically. Whereas if it happened in a official campaign book or codex or rule book, I'll say, yeah, that's almost certainly true. So there's that. And we have one last comment here. Ricardo Andre 7049. According to the Imperium Secundus stuff, the Sanguinor is the herald of Sanguinius who sacrificed himself on Davin when Sanguinius was shoved into the warp rift. He grew wings for the first time there. That is one of the theories. One of the theories about the Sanguinor is that he is the herald of Sanguinius who is reborn in the warp. Maybe, possibly. I don't like that nearly as much as the idea that he's a piece of Sanguinius, but yeah, I mean, it certainly could be. The herald, making him the herald of Sanguinius would be certainly in line and perfectly in line for things. But I'm gonna say that you guys probably would like me to put up a poll for the weird theories, and we should talk about which one of those you guys like the most. So I will do that. Just bear with me for a second here. The most. And let's bring up the poll. All right, I'm gonna start a poll. What weird theory do you like the most? And again, I only have 4 options here, so I am going to break this down into, let's see, Dual Angel, Demon Prince, Prisoner, and Distributed Memory. I think of the top 4, so I'll do those. And sorry, Distributed Memory. This is a lot easier with Alexis. I'm just going to say it. Prisoner, right, and Dual Angel. Actually, I don't like the Dual Angel. You know what? Let's replace that with the Sanguinius didn't die the way we think he did. And that is too long. Okay, we'll try that. Okay, I'm starting poll now. So now the weird theories are up there for you guys to vote on. Go give those a look. So now would be a good time for you guys to talk about your fan theories. What are your favorite fan theories about how Sanguinius could return? Your head canon. How does it work? Where does he come from? Destro Vitumber says the Primarch as a psychic echo or the origin of miracles is a good option because it would allow the resulting miniatures to be used with other Imperial forces and not just Blood Angels. True. I presume in this case you're thinking of like something like the Living Saint Celestine, where it'd be like an ally kind of thing, maybe. The Blood Angels are very, how do I put this? They're not insular, but they're very connected to each other. Like one of the big major themes of the devastation of Baal was the Blood Angels calling all their successors back to the homeworld to defend it against the Tyranids. And there was sort of a renewed sense of brotherhood, a renewed sense of faith in the chapter in the future, a chapter that had been dwindling. I don't know about this because using it with other Imperial forces, I mean, you can field Gilliman with other Imperial forces, and I think you can field the Lion if he's leading an allied force. I'm not sure if the Lion could just show up in the 10th edition or not. Yeah, maybe. I'm just gonna say maybe. All right, one of my favorites, Osmolos 0575. Sanguinius is in a secret chamber of the Blood Ravens. The meme about the Blood Ravens stealing everything. Yeah, that's funny. I dig it. So Ricardo Andre 7049. Campaign and codexes can only tell so much compared to novels detailing unique stories or smaller events. It's the wide forest through the small tree and brush, I'm assuming is what that is meant to be. Or bush. Well, I guess small tree bush. Okay. So novels are great. Like I read 40K novels all the time. It's literally part of my job as a Lorebeard. And I've read some really, really good ones. Actually, Guy Haley is becoming an author I really, really like. And I really like Mike Brooks, and I really like Dan Abnett. I really like Graham McNeil. I really like Aaron Dembski-Bowden. I like a lot of authors. I don't like every author. There are some books I've been like, I don't want to read this. But yeah, I mean, the whole point of the Warhammer novels is they give you a different lens to look at the setting through, a different way to engage. And I would say this, if you like that zoomed in approach, if you like the idea that the novel gives you a more intimate way to engage with the setting, I would say check out the role-playing games. The role-playing games are possibly, in my opinion, like even more so can you immerse yourself in 40K. Even more so can you dig into the details because it's interactive and you get to decide like what you want to focus on, what you want to learn about. So would really definitely recommend checking out the role-playing games if you like that kind of experience. So here's one here from Face Octopus 4571. Great name. If Sanguinius comes back in a twisted or incomplete way, I'd love to see how that impacts his relationships with his brothers, especially the loyalist ones. Yes. One of the next things I'd like to discuss after we look at your theories is to talk about the ramifications. What would happen if Sanguinius did return? And Rush 21129 says Astorath and the Aralim are summoned to finish off a sole survivor of a Blood Angel's defeat who fell to the rage, with only Astorath and a Black Rage cursed Sanguinius return. That's yeah, that's tasty and mysterious. And Astorath's a good character to add to a mysterious thing because he's very mysterious himself, and that would be really, really cool. Black Wolf points out he misses William King as a Warhammer author. So do I. The guy has written a ton of really great fantasy books, though. Go check those out. He's still writing excellent books, and I'm a big fan. All right, we got a crackpot theory from Osmo0575. To bring back Sanguinius, you must get back his masks. One is with Dante, another with the Silent King. Is that true? Oh, that's cool. And maybe one with the Sanguinor, a ritual of relics, a ritual of relics, actually. I like the idea of the masks being important because they are in the lore. Like when you put on the death mask of Sanguinius, that's one of the ways to receive visions of potential outcomes. That would be really, really cool. And Sarmillion Bloodweaver says, or he passes up on the resurrection intentionally when they're trying to bring him back, and puts the energy towards purifying a traitor Primarch since it would help more. And that's very in character for Sanguinius, because like part of the narrative way to Sanguinius dying is that he knew it was going to happen. He went willingly onto that ship knowing he was going to die. So if an attempt to resurrect him was to happen and he were to turn it down, that's very Sanguinius. He'd be like, no, I've already done that. Who could he purify in that scenario? Tough question. So we don't know where Lorgar is. He's being chased by Corax somewhere. Perturabo never wanted to be a demon prince. Maybe Perturabo would be one he could cleanse. And Perturabo is he's the boy who needs the most kindness. Like if anybody just showed him a little bit of kindness, Perturabo would be a very different guy. So I could kind of see with Perturabo, where he helps him kind of return from being a demon. That would be kind of wild. Pretty wild. Okay, and Professor Schaap says maybe the Calixis sector might approve of the Sanguinius mask theory. Yeah, because masks are a theme there too. That's correct. And Face Octopus says if we go with the undead route, maybe the Sanguinor could possess Sanguinius's corpse. Aha! That's one we haven't talked about, right? Because we talked about the Sanguinius possessing Mephiston or Dante. What if the Sanguinor just went right back into Sanguinius's body and was like, I'm awake? That is a way to bring back Sanguinius without removing the really important Blood Angel character. So I really, really like that one a lot. All right, so I'm gonna let's put a cap on y'all's theories. Those have been some really good ones. I've enjoyed playing around those thoughts. What do y'all think about this though? What are the impacts of Sanguinius's return if he was to come back? What would that mean? And I got to tell you, it would mean a lot. It would be big. So first of all, like I said, it makes Primarchs immortal. Bringing Sanguinius back effectively tells everyone that Primarchs cannot die ever, because he was so dead, so very, very much dead. Secondly, it definitely undermines his sacrifice. It undermines the narrative significance of his death. The willing martyrdom, the doomed nobility, these are the things that are really kind of central to who the Blood Angels are. And I feel like it would change a lot of some pretty essential elements of the Blood Angels would feel less important. It kind of makes his sacrifice hollow to bring him back. It kind of makes everything we learned about him a betrayal. Like all the time and energy that I spent reading stuff about Sanguinius and imagining what kind of a person he was and thinking about why his death was important, it just would make that all meaningless. It's such a thing. It's such an issue that I'm like, I don't like it. My spirit just rebels against that idea. But again, I'm not in charge, and I'm sure there's a way to execute that idea well. So there's that. But so we have a question here about Face Octopus talking about does the Black Rage go away if Sanguinius returns? That is a very interesting question. And I think, first of all, so we know that when the Primarch is with his Legion, the Legion's flaws are not as severe. So it would certainly impact the Red Thirst. It would certainly lessen that. In my head, if he's not a Death Company or fall into the Black Rage Sanguinius, he would also have a calming impact on the Black Rage. I think that would be lessened as a curse that the Blood Angels have to bear, which is again like a core element of who they are and makes them less interesting, in my opinion. But Osmolos 0575, bro, you're killing it today. The unification of the ecclesiarchy. Yeah, baby. The imperial cult would lose their collective mind if Sanguinius returned. It would be he's known as the Holy Primarch. Okay, just to be clear, his return would have incalculable impacts on the morale of the Imperium. I mean, he's probably more beloved than Gilliman. Gilliman's return was like, oh my god, we got a Primarch back. Holy cow, that's amazing. And morale raised. And then the Lion, oh, we got a Lion. We got 2 Primarchs back. The morale raised. Sanguinius would be that meme of Vince McMahon with his eyes glowing at the end, just like, ah! Like that would be the ultimate. The ecclesiarchy would collectively lose their minds. There would be mass pilgrimages to Baal. I mean, it would turn the Ultima Segmentum, because Baal is in the Ultima Segmentum. It would turn the Ultima Segmentum into the biggest religious revival area of the galaxy, period. It would just be insane. It would also challenge theological foundations in the ecclesiarchy, though, because they believed he achieved his apotheosis through sacrifice. And again, making that sacrifice less meaningful would make martyrdom less a core element of the imperial cult, which it definitely is. So it's yet another reason why I don't love it. But it would the follow-on effects could be a more kinder, gentler, less death happy ecclesiarchy. Man, it would be just to see the ripple effect across the religions would be insane. Ricardo Andre says the ultimate Sanguinius mercy and trolling. Sanguine knows that Conrad hates being wrong, and then being brought back, denying Conrad's own fate and saving him would be massive. So this is going back to the idea that Sanguinius could redeem one of the traitor Primarchs, and if he could redeem Conrad and bring Conrad back from the dead. Oh, now we're talking about 2 Primarchs. My brain. Okay. So Conrad Kurz is the Primarch of the Night Lords. He was a bad dude. He was like the worst version of Batman. Torture and terror were his weapons. Redeeming Conrad would take a lot. It would take an awful lot. And Vulcan would be super pissed, just to be clear. I don't know. It's interesting, and it's thematically, it's narratively a fun twist to imagine the worst Primarch, Conrad, being redeemed by the best Primarch, Sanguinius. That's an interesting thought. I dig it. Okay, we've got a super chat here that I should read. Ricky Chapman, 3377. Thank you, sir. Sanguinius is highly respected by the Silent King. They apparently met during the Great Crusade. Oh, that's cool. That is not something I knew. Interesting. I'll have to. I need to do a deep dive on the Silent King. We should do an episode on the Silent King because he's in a lot of stuff. And they did. This is also the Silent King that allied with the Blood Angels against the Tyranids as well, because I remember reading that in one of the codexes from fifth or sixth edition. Was a kind of a, everybody raised their eyebrows. They're like, Necrons and Blood Angels, what? So yeah, that would be kind of interesting. Ricardo Andre says a more moderate imperial church, what a problem. Okay, I mean, from an ethical standpoint, yes, it's actually a good thing. From a standpoint of like, this is a setting I really love, less, because I think the ecclesiarchy is interesting as just rabid, foaming at the mouth, pious zealots. So, I mean, I don't know. Ricardo Andre points out that Conrad and Sanguinius are 2 sides of the symbolism coin: a monster chained by his humanity and monstrosity chained by, a monster that chained humanity and a monstrosity chained by his humanity. I hadn't thought of it like that. That's a really interesting look at things, Ricardo Andre. Yeah, okay. You've got a point. Conrad is still a super bad dude. And when you're talking about super bad dudes, redeeming them is difficult. I mean, just look at Darth Vader in Star Wars. Redeeming Darth Vader took three movies, and even then we were like, I mean, kind of redeemed. at the very end. So yeah, I don't know. It's a big ask to redeem Conrad, but it's a very interesting idea. I love the idea. I love actually like the concept of Sanguinius struggling to redeem Conrad. That's the story for me, not the he actually gets it done part, but the I'm going to try part. And that would be a fascinating story. I would love to engage with that. Oh, and Ricky Chapman says that the Silent King wore Sanguinius' death mask during that alliance. Interesting. Interesting. And Greenfire, N7 Greenfire points out that Gilliman has already started reforming the church. I mean, to the extent that he can. It's important to remember that the ecclesiarchy wields massive power in the Imperium, and Gilliman largely gets along to go along rather than reform things. So, you're not wrong, but you're not entirely accurate about that. So, okay, so yeah, what are some other impacts of Sanguinius coming back from the dead? Black Rage, Red Thirst. We talked about morale and the Imperial cult. So Sanguinius coming back would give the Imperium 3 Primarchs. Gilliman is the regent, military leader. The Lion is off doing his thing, but Sanguinius could give you another authority figure. He could give you a universally respected authority figure, and arguably the finest combatant amongst those three. In my mind, it goes like this. It's like the Lion, and Sanguinius is like right here. He's just slightly better than the Lion in terms of combat. But Gilliman is definitely, talking about personal combat now, not just leading armies. Gilliman's great. He's great at leading armies. Like one-on-one. And again, we're talking about demigods compared to other demigods. So, even Lorgar, who is the weakest Primarch in terms of physical capability, just imagine Sauron at the beginning of the Lord of the Rings, just destroying whole ranks of soldiers, because Lorgar could do that, and he was the weakest one. Anyway, Ricardo Andre, as your number one Conrad fan, I will defend Conrad without impartiality. Tyrant is still a tyrant, but better than a tyrant that tries to make things better through his flawed methods than a simple monster. Oh, Ricardo Andre, we could have one hell of a conversation about Conrad. We could have a hell of a conversation about him. I like your optimism. I like your almost malicious optimism about Conrad that, no, he's just misunderstood. I can share that kind of passion. And there are definitely fictional characters that I do feel are misunderstood. I don't agree with you on this, but that doesn't mean I don't respect your opinion. And it would be like a really interesting conversation to see if you could change my mind, or maybe I could change your mind. You already brought up one thing that made me go, that's very interesting. So it's possible. I'm not saying you can't talk me around, but I'm saying you're going to have to work hard. All right. Oh, Osmolus 0575. The Lion is Batman. No, Conrad is Batman. If you read about Conrad, he's literally Space Batman. Just a really horrifying version of Space Batman. The Lion is probably more like Liam Neeson's character from Taken. He's the guy you really don't want to mess with, and is, generally pretty scary. So there you go. So if you had Sanguinius back, it would give you a change in the balance of power, if you will, in the Imperium. The ecclesiarchy would ascend a little bit. Gilliman would probably lose some of his influence, because the ecclesiarchy, they'd be looking to Sanguinius. They wouldn't be looking to Gilliman for leadership. It requires a significant narrative reworking of the Era Indomitus, basically is what I mean here. And it also means that souls are, we talked about this already, but it would change the lore and how souls work if Sanguinius could return. Although some of the theories we talked about today are more loreful than others. There's some that are kind of edge cases, and there's some that are like, yeah, that's technically possible. Sanguinius's return would give a lot of those theories a lot more weight. It would change a lot of the perception of how souls are seen in the setting. which would be pretty wild. And it would give you kind of a weird precedent. Okay. So if Sanguinius can be, so Fulgrim came back without a body, right? They cloned his body and his soul went into the cloned body, and he's, at least according to some sources, just like he was. I'm going to argue again that I don't think he's a real Primarch, because a real Primarch could get out. But so Rogel Dorn is another Primarch who essentially has a missing body. Like, all that we know that exists is his hand. And if Sanguinius can return, then so could Dorn. So could any dead Primarch, which is, that leads us to the Lost Legions and the lost 2 Primarchs of those 2 Lost Legions. It's a can of worms, guys. I mean, we're talking about follow-on effect after follow-on effect after follow-on effect after follow-on effect. It would be seismic to 40K's canon and continuity, and that's why I don't know. I'm not a fan. I don't like the idea of bringing back Sanguinius. I'm not saying it won't happen. Just saying I don't like the idea as it currently stands in my head. Maybe somebody who's a lot more creative than I could come up with a really great way to do it where it doesn't suck. But if you have a guy whose death scream literally wrote on the genetic structure of all of his descendants and then bring him back, God, it offends me. I'm sorry. It's from a guy who loves stories and crafting stories. It's like, oh, why would you do that? Ricardo Andre 7049, Lorebeards, quick question. What is your take on the current canonicity of the 40K stuff in the Liber Chaotica books? I find it very much canon in my head, as stuff hasn't been contradicted yet. Okay, so the Liber Chaotica books were a series of books from the Black Library that were essentially background books. They weren't novels, but they had some narrative elements in them, and they discussed at great length elements of what chaos is. It was kind of a new version of The Lost and the Damned, which was the very, very old chaos background book from the 90s. And the Liber Chaotica, my understanding is the Liber Chaotica books are very well regarded. They're considered like a very good execution of its idea. So are they canon? They're, in my opinion, they're less canon than a rule book or a codex. Are they more canon than a novel? Yeah, I'd say there's probably a liminal space between novels and rule books. Oddly enough, and okay, I know this is going to sound self-serving, and I have a natural bias, trying to get all that ahead of what I'm about to say. I feel like the role-playing game material lives there too. And the reason I say that is because, you know what? I'm doing a whole show on this, guys. Join me next Wednesday. I'm going to talk about what is canon, and I'll talk about why I think there's a space in between novels and rule books and why certain things live there. I don't want to, release too much information now when I could do a whole show about it. And I am going to do a whole show about it. It's already on the schedule. It would be a bad idea to have to take it off the schedule. So I'll stop there. Anyway, so yeah, that was the Liber Chaotica question. Rush 21129 says, what if Sanguinius is the king in yellow, not Valdor? So the king in yellow is a really interesting idea. It's again, one of Dan Abnett's things that is not referenced really anywhere else. But the main idea is that there's a sort of weird warp space where Constantine Valdor exists and is called the King in Yellow, and is slowly making his way back to reality from the immaterium to the materium. So interesting. You would think the Sanguinius would be red. The Yellow King, that's obviously referencing Cthulhu lore, mythos lore, which I love. But it doesn't seem appropriate to Sanguinius because of the color. It's not the right connection. It would definitely suit Dorn. Like I could see Dorn returning that way. We think it's Constantine Valdor, and who shows up? It's Rogel Dorn. That would be a wild Yeah, these are from the Bequin novels. Thank you, Ricardo Andre, 7049. The discussion we're having about the Yellow King come from the Bequin novels by Dan Abnett. Hawk Oddly says Horus returns. What I'm not sure what this is in reference to. Hawk, help me out here. And Osmolus 0575 says, I mean, the Eldar can maintain their souls in Wraithbone. That's what they believe. They believe that to be true. And they know an awful lot about souls of technology. I would not go against the Eldar on that. I would say those are almost certainly souls, and they are almost certainly kept in the Wraithbone and are used just like it's described. So, yeah, I mean, I presume what you're saying there is that we know some things about souls, right? And given that information, yes, that's true. We do know some things about souls. However, I should point out that the Eldari don't really have. Okay, I was about to say that the Eldari don't really have a splintered or shattered soul thing, but they actually do, because that's the god of war Cain has been shattered into numerous shards that exist at the heart of each craft world. Huh. Okay. So I feel like you're drawing a line from the Eldar view souls to the idea that Sanguinius' soul could exist like the shattered statue to sand or powder analogy that we had earlier. So that's interesting. Hawk was saying that if any Primarch could return, it could be Oh, okay. Okay. So what Hawk is saying here is that if we establish that any Primarch can return, which is what would happen if Sanguinius returned from the dead, that would also mean that Horus could return from the dead and restart. God, would that it would render the Horus heresy essentially meaningless, because you just have to do it all over again. Okay. I had not considered that. Good point. And I think Hawk's got an interesting look here at why necessarily Sanguinius return. I need to stop the poll because the poll's been going for a while. And let's see what our answer is here. Okay, you guys, of the weird fan theories, the most popular one is distributed memory. Distributed memory being the one where Sanguinius he lives in all of the blood angels who have drank his blood, which is all blood angels. And the resurrection of Sanguinius could be a collective reintegration. That's the word I was looking for. Reintegration earlier. A reintegration of his memories into a soul that they could inhabit the body or some other form, or even, like we talked about, could be an imposter or a hallucination or delusion or something along those lines. Yeah, the distributed memory is a cool idea. I like it a lot. It offers some really interesting narratives, and it doesn't get rid of any existing characters. You could combine the distributed memory with the Sanguinor. Again, I feel like the Sanguinor just needs more fleshing out. He's the Mysterious Avenger is cool for a while, but over a long enough timeline, and it's been a while. Sanguinor was introduced in 2009, 2008 or 9. It's been like 16 years. So yeah, there's just hasn't been much lore about Sanguinor in 16 years, and I would like to see more. That's why I would like to involve the Sanguinor. But yeah, that's a cool idea, is to bring that. Ricardo Andre points out it's the shaman ritual all over again. The shaman ritual that he's talking about. Ricardo, are you talking about the shamanic stuff with the Emperor, or are you talking about something else? Just want to be clear. Anyway, so we've done our poll for the distributed memory. And lastly, I would like to put a poll up for that big question. Should Sanguinius return? And this is only going to have two options. It's going to be a yes or no. Starting the poll now. I want to see what you guys think. You guys know where I stand. I stand no, he should not return. At least not in his full form. I'm a yes for some version of Sanguinius that doesn't have all the follow-on effects that we've already discussed. And I'm on board for some sort of symbolic return or communion or connection to existing lore, because those things don't fully invalidate his fate. But, you know, gun to my head, do I pick yes or no? I pick no. And I'm kind of curious to see what you guys think, because if you guys want Sanguinius to return, hey, cool. Games Workshop, I'm sure, will accommodate you at some point in the future if you're loud enough. We'll have to see how that works out. But yes, Sanguinius's return would be seismic. The Ecclesiarchy would be going crazy. It would give the Imperium 3 Primarchs at once, which would be pretty wild. Like the current setup with Guilliman kind of being the regent and the Lion running around as like a knight errant on quests. That works. That works just fine. If you throw Sanguinius into the mix, though, it could change a lot of that. It could change a lot of the current dynamic, which again, I really like the current dynamic. So, Ricardo Andre, it's a yes or no question. And then Ross proceeds to put in gray references that can fit in either. Yeah, I know. My brain is a little overactive, and as soon as somebody presents me with the black and white choice, I'm like, well, what's the third option? The trolley problem and me were difficult in school, because I was like, I just stopped the trolley. And they're like, it's not an option. I'm like, why? It's a trolley. It's got all the trolley things, you know. And Osmolos 0575 says, even if it would be great, the modern Imperium doesn't need, for now, a new Primarch. Yeah, it does. I hadn't considered putting that on the list. I really should have. But does the setting even, I mean, that's even the bigger question. Does the setting, as people who love engaging with the setting of Warhammer 40,000, does it need another Primarch returning? Tough question. I'm a big Layman Russ fan. I really like Vulcan. I really like Korax. And I'd love to see what happened to those guys. I've always been sitting there like, this is the wolf time. Layman Russ should come back. It's the wolf time. But if I think about it from your standpoint, from the question you just proposed, I don't think they do. I don't think there is a need for a Primarch. Part of the reason I think why they did the Aaron Dominus the way they did with the Cicatrix Maledictum screwing up half the galaxy is to give them an excuse to bring back Primarchs. Right? You have to have a big problem for big heroes. And yeah, I don't know. Oh, Nestor Vitumbra says Sanguinius should merge with Caiaphas Cain. Oh, he would hate that. Oh God, Cain would just lose. He'd be livid. Just like we talked about Caiaphas Cain in a previous episode, we talked about potentially him being like an Imperial Saint and how that would be horrible for him, but great for everyone else. Yeah, funny. I like it. So Ricardo Andre says it needs more Xeno stuff. If a Primarch returns, it should not be known stuff. It should be stuff in the shadows that we can notice upon closer inspection, but not actively known stuff. Okay. Well, 40K thrives on unreliable narrators. It thrives on rumors and legends, and we think this is true, but it may not actually be true. So yeah, I agree. I would like that would be. That's one of the things that's kind of fun about Clone Fulgrim, right? Clone Grim. He lives in Trazen's collection, and we're not sure if he's really the real Fulgrim Primarch or not. And it allows for interpretations like mine, where I'm like, I don't think he is because, you know, and it allows for interpretations like some of the other ones I've seen where Fulgrim is a full Primarch and he's just being held against his will, and he would be a great ally if only he could be released. The best stories leave room for interpretations and ideas. They don't seal off every corridor and answer and chase down every question. They sometimes leave questions. To be clear, I'm not advocating for a J.J. Abrams style mystery box. I am not. But I am saying that you don't need to define everything. And it's can be very good to have ambiguity. To have ambiguity exist. It can also, part of the reason why I dislike bringing back Sanguinius is that he was one of the few certainties you could point to. You know, like if you talk about the Marvel universe, you're asking questions about various X-Men. Are they dead? Are they alive? Doesn't really matter. They're always going to be back in some form or another because Marvel brings people back from the dead all the time. But you can pretty much count on Uncle Ben always being dead, and you can pretty much count on Marvel, the original Captain Marvel, always being dead. I didn't say 100% of the time, but most of the time you can count on those guys being dead. And that's kind of how I see Sanguinius, is he's the Uncle Ben of 40K. He's that guy who won't come back because, like Uncle Ben, his death was so meaningful to the setting. All right, and we've got Ricardo Andre again, like a shadow war between the cults Lorgar has been making, with Korax randomly killing those cults when they become problematic, but we only get a shadow of a report what happened. Yeah, that's pretty good. Professor Schaap said it would be like bringing back Ferrus Manus as well. Yeah, Ferrus Manus dying was a major event in the Horus Heresy and affected the Iron Hands deeply. There are some interesting fan theories about him and the Legion of the Damned, which I would love to get into if we talk about Ferrus Manus or the Legion of the Damned or the Iron Hands, which we will on this show. Oh yeah, Schaap points out that Bucky was one of those who was dead and then come back as the Winter Soldier, which is a very cool take. Again, it's about the execution, right? Like, I recoil from the idea of bringing back Sanguinius. Just instinctively, that's just who I am. But I'm logical enough to say that a good enough execution of bringing back Sanguinius, I would totally be on board with. It just needs to be really, really good. It needs to avoid the pitfalls that we have established. I'm going to bring the poll to an end here in about 5 minutes, so make your last votes if you'd like to count. Okay, and Osmolos 0575. I love Lorgar. I hope Lorebeards 40K can give us a stream of him. You know what? I have on my list of show ideas that I want to do is I want to cover all the Primarchs. And I want to do like a tier list of Primarchs. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Lorgar is a very interesting dude, but in my opinion, he's a little bit less interesting than some of the guys around him, like Erebus and Corferin and what's the name of that guy that led the Galvorbeck? The I forget his name. He's another one of those red something or other Space Marines. So that'd be there's some guys around Lorgar that are maybe a little bit more interesting. Erebus is like a whole episode on Erebus. Argoltal, thank you. Yes, Rush 21129 says Argoltal. Argoltal is another really interesting dude that's in the orbit of Lorgar. But Lorgar is cool, and again, I would love to do a series on the Primarchs, and so yeah, consider that already. Consider that already in the works. That is definitely something we're going to do. All right, I am ending the poll, and the answer is 2/3 of you guys said no. 66%. That's pretty. I like that. That aligns with my thinking. Do appreciate that very much. Can we all agree? Screw Erebus, asks Black Wolf. Yeah. Erebus is largely responsible for the Horus Heresy in its entirety. If you had to go back to Horus Heresy and say, well, what's the most important foundational points for the Horus Heresy? Erebus is up there. It's thanks to Erebus that we get all kinds of really bad stuff happening. So yeah, screw Erebus. He's yeah. That's the role he has in the lore is literally that role. He is the one we hate. And it's weird to say, but the setting's actually stronger for having him be a part of it. It's strong. It's good to have characters that you can actively hate, because that means you're engaging with the material. If you just feel apathetic towards them, then it's less important. Are there characters I feel apathetic about in 40K? Yes, but they're not generally the big ones. So there you go. Yeah, Hawk Oddly says, what if people didn't listen to Erebus? Well, yeah, the Great Crusade would have happened, and according to Malkador, what would have eventually happened is all the Space Marines would have been killed off, just like the Thunder Warriors, and the Primarchs would become regional governors of the galaxy. That's the short answer. And Zero Daimu says the one most responsible is Samus, clearly. I mean, Samus, he's a demon. He's a warp entity that crops up in the Horus Heresy books quite a bit. Less impactful than Erebus, in my opinion. Let's just put it that way. So, all right. We have reached the last 15 minutes of the stream, and I'm going to just kind of turn this into a Ask Me Anything at this point, AMA. Bring up your questions. I will answer them. I told you guys why I'm not going to do the mini review this time, because I would like Alexis to be there for that. So, yeah, let's just talk about Ask Me Anything. Lich Lord Tears, how are you today? Doing pretty well. Got to be honest, I love doing Lorebeards streams. It's actually really, really fun. Talking about 40K for 3 hours straight, maybe not everybody's idea of a good time. I enjoy it. Like I'm that guy that when the demons drag me to hell, I'm going to distract them by telling them all the lore about Warhammer 40K and the Horus Heresy and Necromunda and Space Hulk, and just I will bore them to death with all the weird trivia that I have in my brain and headcanon for 40K. So being able to share it with an audience that does appreciate it, like you guys, is actually it's pretty great. I enjoy it. So yeah, while I'm streaming, I'm having a good time. You guys should know that. All right. Hawkeye says, Lorebeards, would you be able to post a blank version of the Build the Space Marine chapter Google Doc? Also, when will part 2 of that stream be happening? We just, I recently scheduled it. Let me see if I can find the specific date. I know you guys are really interested in that. So we have a channel for scheduling. I proposed it for... Apologies, it's not in the place I thought it was. I am proposing it for the 31st of January, is Build the Space Marine chapter part 2. Will I be able to post a blank version of the chapter doc? Yes. But it's really just kind of the same questions that were in the Deathwatch book, First Founding, updated with a little bit of stuff from other places on the internet. Yeah, we can certainly do it. I'll do it. I don't want to take credit for all the stuff on it, because some of that stuff is stuff that I helped build, but some of it isn't. So, good point, Hawkeye. We will definitely do that. So, question from Rush21129: Lorebeards, refake death version from earlier. What if Sangi in the Rage killed Oleanus Pearson and the Emperor covered it up for morale reasons? Okay, we have our first 40K conspiracy theory now. I love it. What if Sanguinius' death was not reported accurately, and instead he fell to the Black Rage, killed Oleanus Pearson, and the Emperor covered it up? Okay, my friend. I see your tinfoil hat, and I will put one on. Sanguinius killing Oleanus Pearson. Well, what we think we know about Oleanus Pearson is that he's a perpetual. So would Sanguinius be able to kill him? Interesting question. Stuff again. There's a lot of a wizard did it in play on board the Vengeful Spirit in that big final climactic moment. So it's technically possible, because the warp is doing weird stuff on board that ship. Yes, and that would explain an awful lot, wouldn't it, about the misrepresentation of Sanguinius. Nestor Vitumbra, the Emperor personally knew Erebus and Corferin, so why did he not sense their corruption? Okay. We need to do an episode. We definitely need to do an episode on the Emperor. But I can tell you this. He is a being with immense power, grand vision, and thinks in ways that are incomprehensible to you and I. He's also profoundly flawed, and that's a direct quote from Games Workshop to me when I was asking about the Emperor. And I who knows? Why didn't he sense their corruption? Maybe he was thinking about that Webway project that was going to be awesome 5,000 years after the Great Crusade. Maybe he just didn't spend enough time around him. I mean, the Emperor didn't know. Maybe he had faith in Lorgar. I mean, okay, I know that's using a pun, faith. Maybe he had belief in, okay, we're there again. Maybe the Emperor thought that Lorgar would follow his directions and not go back to being all about religion, which is weird because he's from a planet that's all about religion. It's just one of those questions, man. I don't think we'll ever know the answer to this. I'm going to chalk it up to the Emperor is profoundly flawed. Okay. Opinion about the new Red Corsairs minis. What do you think? What's his name? Huron Blackheart looks amazing. That's a glow up. In my opinion, that's an improvement. All right, Lorebeards, two things. With all the expansion of the lore the novels have done, especially in terms of characters, why don't you consider them canon if they do not contradict codex and campaign books? Okay, I've been engaging with this IP for a long time, especially as a narrative creator. I started working on the role-playing game in 2008, so it's been 18 years since, so like a whole adult. And every time we would talk about something loreful, people would bring up novels. Okay. And it's like I said, the novels sometimes just don't reflect 40K. Ian Watson is a great example. CS Goto's books are, yeah, they don't reflect 40K. Don't recommend them. I don't have anything personal against CS Goto. I'm sure he's a very nice guy, but his books are not 40K. So if you were to do this, if you were to say novels are canon unless they're not, then you are bringing in a lot of stuff that doesn't accurately show you what 40K is. And in fact, I think kind of harms the overall IP to do this. Okay, here's a great example. I've worked on the Lord of the Rings and Star Wars as well. A lot of stuff having to do with that. And Star Wars's canon pre Disney acquiring them was a mess. It was a huge mess. In pre Disney Star Wars canon, there was Skippy the Jedi droid. There were at least five different anthropomorphic rabbit alien races, including one named Jackson, who was Luke Skywalker's buddy. There was a duel between Princess Leia and a Hutt Jedi. A lot of stupid stuff. That's what I'm getting. It's just a lot of stuff that's just dumb. It's just like, what are you doing? You know, what is this? This isn't Star Wars. You know, it's just a lot of that. And Disney kind of came in and cleaned it up. They said, okay, all the previous expanded universe is now Legends, and we're going to pick and choose what we want out of that. And I think that was the right way to go. Another good example is the Batman animated series, BTAS, Batman BTAS. And that was pulling from Batman comics like Disney's pulling from Star Wars expanded lore. They pulled the best stuff and left the crap behind. They used a pan and sieved out all the gold. Okay. So with your question, Ricardo Andre, it's about sieving out the gold. Like what books would you want to be canon? Because there's some that aren't, and some or some that shouldn't be. Let's put it that way. Siba 210 C9 says Lizardman 40K Part 2 when? Ask Sotek. I would love to do it, but that would be on his side of the thing. I'm sure Alexis wouldn't mind talking more about it because she's a big Lizardman guy, a Lizardman fan. So am I. I also like Lizardman. In Total War Warhammer, my favorite Lizardman legendary lord is Dwayne Gorok Johnson. So that's just so you know. All right. And Lorebeards, if Russ comes back, how funny would it be if it was Lucas that finds him first? Lucas the Trickster, I presume, is what you mean, which is a Loki-like character in the Space Wolves Space Marine chapter. It would be pretty funny because Lucas is he's a non-traditional Space Wolf, that's for sure. All right, and Professor Shap, do you think a tech priest can become an Inquisitor? Like maybe severing ties to the cult mechanics and devoting themselves to the Inquisition. This is a very good question. Okay, so the Mechanicus as an entity, they are like an empire inside an empire. They are allied to the Imperium and work with the Imperium. They are not technically a part of the Imperium. Like Forge Worlds are they're under the rule of Mars, not the Imperium. And there was this whole treaty that was signed when the Emperor went to Mars to formalize how this all works. The Inquisition is an imperial organization. It is not a Mechanicus organization. In my opinion, it's possible, but extremely unlikely. I think it's far more interesting to think about what the Cult Mechanicus has that's analogous to the Inquisition. Because you got to imagine there's guys that go root out tech heresy and guys that go make sure that scrap code isn't in your system infiltrating somewhere. Like, there are cults. There are certainly cults on Forge Worlds. There's cults on Mars. And it is beyond... I can't imagine that there aren't some version of Inquisitors inside the Mechanicus, the Adeptus Mechanicus. So, interesting question. And I like that you're asking thought-provoking stuff. Thank you. Okie doke. Ricardo Andre 7049 asks, the Emperor is not omnipotent. He is not omniscient. His priorities are on a much grander scale than our tiny brain thinks. That is all true. I think the Emperor is profoundly human in his inhumanity. In the fact that he's not perfect. Yeah, I mean, I like that. That's an interesting take. I appreciate that. All right, and Ricardo Andre, trying to draw canon out of Warhammer is checking how many sources agree on stuff, and if they don't, why. If Y agrees with other sources relevant to another piece of lore, then canon. This brings up some issues with regards to creating licensed work for Games Workshop. And on this subject, I am going to speak with some authority. I have worked on several licensed projects for Games Workshop. I worked on all the 40K roleplay stuff back in the day. I worked on a design Wrath of Glory as well. I worked on Battlefleet Gothic Armada, and I worked on Regicide, which were both games that were released, and I worked on two MMOs for 40K that never got published, Dark Millennium Online being one of them. And I've spent a lot of time talking to Games Workshop licensing, specifically the guys that are in charge of what gets made outside of Games Workshop. And the only things that are made outside of, at least the stuff that I was working on, they were very detail intensive, and nothing's more detailed than a role-playing game, frankly. It dives, that is the deepest dive for 40K. And every time I was working with these guys, what was canon was very important, okay? Because they want third-party products to accurately represent what Warhammer is. So for licensing for Games Workshop, they have a very defined, like, this is Warhammer, okay? And the internet being the internet, there is a lot of stuff that exists out there that may seem canon, but isn't, or is very, very heavily detailed and very beloved. Things like the Dornian heresy, sorry, which is a like mirror universe of 40K that was conjured up on Bolter and Chainsword, is fascinating and chock full of information, but it is not canonical. And again, we talked about the novels being like a mixed bag. Some of them are really great and really accurately represent 40K. Some of the novels have defined what 40K is. I'd love to do a show about like terminology, Vox, Prometheum. These are things that came from Dan Abnett's novels and didn't exist prior to them, for example. So there have been novels that have like flat out built what 40K is. But there are also novels that don't. So, yeah, I mean, from the standpoint of a fan looking in, this is legit and reasonable and logical. From the standpoint of someone who's trying to build something that fits into that world and can become canonical, like some of the stuff that I worked on for the role-playing game has entered the codexes and entered the rule books. Stuff like the Ordo Chronos or the Death Watch in general, actually, I kind of defined what they are, and that has carried on into what is canon. So yeah, it's just different from my perspective, from where I sit, from the things I've done. But I don't think you're being unreasonable. I just want to be clear. It's a difference of perspective. This is the Obi-Wan Luke discussion, isn't it? You know, from a certain point of view. Okay, I'm not lying to you, unlike Lobi-1, but there you go. Best answer I can give. Okay, we're almost at the end of the show, so I'm going to do one more question. Ricardo Andre. Oh, here we go. Going to be honest, my points concerning canonicity, here we go again, are far bigger than I can put in a YouTube chat thing, so I'll leave it in the server. May you enjoy that. Thank you, Ricardo. Good conversation. We will have a whole show on canonicity. It's on the schedule. Sarmelian Bloodweaver says, do we know how Sanguinius felt about the whole purge genocide of resistant humans and literally all Xenos during the Crusade? Sanguinius was on board. Sanguinius was on board. There are no good guys in 40K. And Sanguinius, as beloved and as respected as he was on board with the Emperor's plan. He absolutely was. No question about it. Okay. End of the stream, fellas. I'm going to have to head out. Thank you so much for joining me today on my solo stream on New Year's Day. I would like to make a tradition of this. So if we're still doing this at the end of 2026, I'll see you then for another New Year's Day show. Appreciate you guys, and I will see you on the next Lorebeards. Take care.